Yippee!
We are going live. Here we are, live. Woohoo. Oh, and StreamYard reminded me to say hello to the people who are watching us time shifted later on the rewind. I was like, so hello, people who are not watching us live, even though our number live now is 0, so no one's watching us live anyway at the moment. It'll take people a few minutes to.
Gus hasn't started thinking on what 3 words to call us this week yet.
Yes. And, people don't want to show up until Paolo's here. So, that's how it is.
Well, that's, yeah.
All the ladies show up for Paolo.
Right.
Hey, I'm not disputing it.
Dispute. Talking
I will not dispute you.
Do not dispute you. I'll for sure. I don't think I ever showed this since I got it this summer. Hello, Pine, Cashew, and Hazel. Hazel.
I love the
Good
name
evening,
Hazel.
Gus. I got this summer for my birthday. I don't know if I ever showed it off. How to draw DC Comics.
You did show that.
It.
It's still awesome.
I know. I think I showed it off on my haul video. I don't know if I ever showed it off on the Friday night video.
And that's the one with Bunch in it, right?
Yes, this is the one our friend Steve Bunch wrote and our friend Scott Koblish drew. So and I also just saw someone was DC just gave this out in one of their like DC Universe packages or something like that. There was I don't know who. I guess they give it out to I don't know, journalists, reporters, whoever they wanted to give it out to at New York Comic Con,
like a press kind of thing.
Yeah, right. And this was in the package. I forget where I saw someone show it off. It must have been on YouTube, but I saw someone show it off. But I'd like to say that it's got one of these elastic hold it together things in it.
Right.
I have that on some of my sketchbooks and notebooks. They always wear out faster than the sketchbook or notebook.
Yeah.
So the elastic in them doesn't last indefinitely. But it's kind of interesting because it's spiral bound, which is kind of cool. So you can open it up.
Lay it flat.
You can lay it flat and open it up and see. Like I said, my friend Steve Bunch actually wrote it, and my friend Scott Koblish did all the drawings. There's how to rough. This is all rough poses, rough sketch, inks, pencils on that page. It goes through the whole process. There's Catwoman and all the different stages. Right. What was interesting, too, is at the end, they give you a pad of paper. And this is some pretty good paper, too. This is drawing paper. It's not just random crappy paper. So if you want to practice all the drawings they give you in here, you can actually do that. So I thought that was a pretty nice little package. Rough sketch.
There's no lessons on how to draw ambush bug, is there?
I don't know. I haven't studied it that closely, but I'm guessing no. Harley Quinn, of course.
Sure.
You can draw Catwoman. Artist's notes. Catwoman stands a little below 6 feet tall and has a very fit physique. Who doesn't? It's superheroes. Everyone has a very fit physique.
Say I don't. I'm taller than that. So.
Are you taller? How tall are you?
6'2".
Oh, very.
Taller.
For some reason, I figured you as more as 5'11", 6 feet, but that's the taller the better.
It's close enough.
Yep.
I don't know. Being tall has disadvantages too, especially on airplanes.
Yeah, I can see that. But I'm only 4'11" and a half, and
wow. Yeah.
So I have trouble in the supermarket because I can't reach the top shelf of anything.
I saw a lady in the supermarket just the other day that had the exact same problem. I had to pull something down from the shelf for
her. That's why I like having tall people around.
Scott is a big dude.
I love all my tall male friends.
The tallest person I ever saw. Do either one of you two? You're old enough to remember this. Do you remember a basketball player named Ralph Sampson?
No.
What team?
Well, he played for the Houston Rockets when he was in the NBA. He played with Hakeem Olajuwon. They called them the Twin Towers. But Ralph was also a college basketball phenom at UVA. Okay.
Gotcha. I wouldn't remember. I would have remembered somebody on the Celtics, but not.
Oh, I hate the Celtics, but that's a whole nother story.
Well, I'm just saying because that would have been the team that growing up in New England.
Right. Gotcha. The reason I brought that up is I went to college with Ralph's sister, and she's the same height I am. She's 6'2".
Oh.
Ralph is 7'4".
Wow.
And he came to watch her play basketball one time. I see his car pull up, and he gets out of it. And I'm not used to looking up at most people. I'm not the tallest guy in the world, but I'm taller than most people.
Yeah.
So he gets out, and he keeps getting out, and he keeps getting out. And I'm like, damn, you know? It came to the conclusion, like, he towers over me like I would tower over somebody that was 5 feet tall.
Wow.
Back when I was at SUNY Purchase, the Knicks used to practice there.
Right.
Sometimes you'd see them in the weight room or something and just be like, whoa.
Yeah. And it's funny because on TV, most players are, the shorter guards is one exception, but most players, you don't get a sense of how tall they are because they're, amongst mostly other tall guys. But when you see them individually, it's like, oh, yeah, hi.
Same with football players. I can still remember seeing Lawrence Taylor in a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they always said how big Lawrence Taylor is as a football player.
Right.
And I think he was 6'4". But, he's around a lot of guys who are that size. Or
not only is that tall, but he's also...
Yeah. So on the football field, watching him on TV, he looks a little medium-sized.
Right.
I remember seeing him on this TV show years later, where he was out sort of on the dance floor, going a little crazy with normal-sized humans, and it was like, holy cow, that guy's big.
Yeah,
that's how I always.
Yeah.
I always have to remind myself. It's like we know a couple of guys from our Marvel days. Dave Sharp being one of them. He's still a letterer there.
Yeah.
And he's 6'5", 6'6", somewhere around there. I can't remember exactly what. And sometimes, like, I'm watching these football players, and I have to remind myself that it's like, these guys are Dave's size and taller.
Right.
Only world-class athletes. So it's kind of like, it's a whole different frame of reference.
Dave's shorter than these guys.
Yeah.
It's I have a cousin. My cousin Hogue is 6'7" or 8, something like that.
Wow!
It's so fun to take pictures next to him because it's like my head's like here, and his is,
right.
They're like he's like 2 heads taller than I am, and it's fun.
There's a photograph that was taken on the set of the second Conan movie, where Arnold Schwarzenegger, who supposedly is 6'2", but he's not quite, he's more like 6, is standing between Wilt Chamberlain and Andre the Giant.
Oh,
wow!
And not only is Wilt tall, but he's also really muscular too. A lot of people didn't realize that. They make him look tiny in between them.
Yep.
Yeah. It is amazing, and that's how big these superheroes. I mean, when you think about this little description here, said Catwoman is just under 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
That's my height. I'm just under 6 feet tall.
Gotcha.
So she's pretty big.
Yeah, she's a Sue Boardman.
Yeah.
Our friend Sue Boardman, she's got to be at least 6 feet tall.
I never thought of Catwoman as 5'11", but I never imagined what her height would be.
It really depends on who's drawing her too.
I don't think there's any height consistency in comics.
There's not.
I pictured Catwoman as being much shorter than that. I thought she'd be really petite.
I mean,
unless Batman is like 6'8", she's been drawn.
Right.
Like how tall would you say? I wonder if they tell you how tall. How tall would you think Batman is?
I'm gonna say Batman's about 6'2".
Yeah.
That's what I would guess would be maximum Batman height.
Because he's got to pass in the real world. he's got to pass as Bruce Wayne in the real world.
Yeah,
so
he's
he
got to
can't
pass
do
as
it.
Bruce Wayne, so maybe he's not even. But I've seen Catwoman drawn a head shorter than Batman all the time. Do you know your height in centimeters? No, let me look.
My height is 1.88 meters.
Nope, I don't have centimeters on this one.
Jared, do you have a smart speaker?
What was that?
Do you have a smart speaker?
No.
Oh, okay. See, if you did, you just asked to convert your height into centimeters and see what it says.
I love Daisy's super mask. Laser eyes? Could be.
No, these are my onion goggles.
Onion goggles. She's cooking.
Not goggles from the Onion, which would be funny.
They would be funny for about 3.5 seconds. No, these are my goggles that I wear when I chop onions because I'm very sensitive to the onioniness, and this prevents me from weeping into my own hands.
Gotcha.
Ever. But I can't,
The
then I
plant
can't.
is 6 feet tall when standing still. Jennifer wants to see what your goggles look like.
They look like this.
I don't know why she's coming live on our show because
just see goggles.
Not looking on her own screen.
You should get some steampunk.
Yeah, I mean we are broadcasting.
Aw, Jennifer, you're having a good hair day.
Thank you.
Welcome.
That is my sister Jennifer, by the way, to everybody out there. It does not tell us how tall Batman is. Oh, hold on. Let's see. Batman is a stern presence. There you go. He's looking stern.
Is he a Roger Stern presence?
Nope. Whose mood is often as dark as his costume. And his look is intended to inspire fear. He stands just over 6 feet in height. And his physique is a perfect example of the human body, pushed to peak levels of fitness and performance. So he's 6 foot and a half around there. So Catwoman is an inch shorter than Batman. I don't really think I've seen her drawn an inch shorter.
Yeah, I don't envision her as being quite as tall, close to that tall as he is. I think how the artist does it.
I don't heels or without heels, because she's usually wearing some spikes.
That's right. If she's got heels on, she's taller than Batman. But Batman's got those combat boots, so that adds a couple of inches to his height right there. Not as tall as the heels.
Now you can get away with like 5-inch heels if your feet are big enough, and and then if there's a platform on there, you get even more.
Wonder Woman's got 4-inch heels on, so she should tower above everybody too.
Yeah, I mean, I thought she towered above everybody anyway. She's a freaking Amazon.
Sometimes she does, sometimes she doesn't.
We were talking about, was it that scene in Darwin Cook's New Frontier, the previous week or the week before, where he drew her just slightly taller than Superman. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I have no idea how tall Wonder Woman's supposed to be. I don't think they gave her height in here. Oh, there's a nice shot.
Yeah. And I'm not super into like the superhero stuff, but it kind of irritates me that like I like Gal Gadot, and okay, fine, if that's who's Wonder Woman, that's great. But I just wish they had chosen someone who was a little more Amazon-y. You know what I mean? Like, it comes off as a little bit too...
Like Jeff Bezos?
Too what?
Like Jeff
He's
Bezos?
making bad Amazon.com jokes. Don't encourage him. Saul thinks you need a cape to match you need an onion cape now. I tried to tough it out cutting onions one time and almost sliced off my finger because I couldn't see.
And that's exactly what happens to me. So I need these babies. And until the pasta's done and I can chuck the onions in the pan, I have to sit here looking at you guys.
I've been told that if you wet a paper towel and put it by the slicing area, the fumes go. I've heard that too. I've also heard running water does the same. So like if you turn on this water in the sink, it does the same thing. But
if you keep rinsing the onion under the water in the sink, yeah, that works.
Yeah.
But but I had this onion already cut in the fridge, and I just had to slice it thinly. I probably should.
One of the best toys I got in a long time was a vegetable slicer. We just put it. Basically, it's a bed of blades that are arranged in a grid pattern. You can just push down on it, chop your vegetables. I freaking love that thing.
I need one of those that doesn't break. I've had a couple, but they tend to break. But
Jared Powell's here.
Paolo's here. There he is.
Hello.
Here I am.
Didn't see him down there.
There he is.
Hello.
What's
Good
up?
evening, Paolo.
Save the day.
We're because of how to draw DC Comics I was just showing, we're discussing superhero heights. Mine the comics pictures Wonder Woman about 6'4". Who do you think is taller? Big Barda or Wonder Woman?
Big Barda.
Barda's got to be
Big
taller,
Barda.
right? She's got big in her name.
She's bulkier.
Yeah.
I don't know if she's taller.
And she's a god.
Mm-hmm. How tall is Big? I bet they all have official heights in
They
the
probably do.
whatever the handbook they have. What's the DC one called? The Who's Who
Too.
Guide to
Yeah.
the DC Universe.
How tall is Plastic Man?
As tall as he wants to
Or long.
be, or short.
I think Big Bard is definitely bigger than any other of the female characters. That's just my guess.
She's bulkier.
Who
Yeah,
are Marvel's biggest female characters? Thundra?
She-Hulk.
Red Sonja.
Yeah, She-Hulk.
She-Hulk.
She-Hulk is definitely up there. Thundra.
Yeah. Thundra is tall. Thundra is taller than the Thing.
Who is?
Tundra is taller than Ben Grimm.
Well, the Thing was only supposed to be 5'10".
Yeah, but then they started exaggerating. His height.
Everybody got taller over the years. Powers creep once again.
Oh yeah, well, Wolverine is like a foot and a half taller than he used to be.
Yeah.
So he's what, 4 feet tall now?
Yeah, you can play the
Wolverine
Vito
was
now.
supposed to be super short.
So Aunt May is going to be what, 6'6"?
Mhm.
Oh
Well,
my
I think
God.
Aunt May's 20 years younger. In another couple of decades, she'll be a cougar.
She started out being like 65, and now she's 85 even. Who knows?
Yeah, she was up there.
She was not young.
Maybe she's
But old-
she's like Merlin. She's aging in reverse.
But as I've heard other people point out, back in those days, young people were older than they are today, because you used to, if you were a man, you drank and smoked and ate red meat all your life, and then retired at 65 and died at 68. So you could be, 56 years old and look old. Because it was a different era.
Yeah, one of the radio show I was listening to just before coming here, they had a guy on there who was like, "Oh, what am I doing with my life? I'm 35 and I'm already 35 and married, and I've got this, that, and the other thing going on." It's like he's bitching about all the stuff that people nowadays bitch about when they're in their 50s.
I'm like, dude, you're still in diapers, man. Come on.
Big Barda is taller than Mr. Miracle. Yes, that
Yeah.
is Moondragon should be tall, but she's kind of willowy tall.
Uh-huh.
I picture Moondragon sort of as fashion model tall.
Mhm.
Not
Well,
as
she likes to
She-Hulk
stand.
tall.
When she was in the Avengers, she liked to stand close to tall because she had that thing. On this side of the aisle, it's us, the gods,
Ah,
because that's what Moondragon used to describe herself as. I am a god, and Thor was like, "No, you ain't."
oh man, I just saw. A matter of fact, I heard. Do you guys know who Peter Sanderson is?
Yep.
That name sounds familiar.
Mhm.
That's because he is sort of a comic book historian guy. He's worked for both Marvel and DC over the years, and has written books sort of in conjunction with them about comic book history. And I saw him mention this on Facebook, but Sleepy Reader just showed a copy today. I don't know the guy's name. The guy's name, and Peter Sanderson was like, "Oh, I'm a little envious of his book because he Peter Sanderson is kind of well known for having read lots and lots of comics. But this new author wrote a book having read every Marvel comic since 1961, which I think he said was like 27,000 or something. And he wrote a book about it. I don't know. And Sleepy Reader had not read the book yet. He was just showing it off and going, he's like, I think he said it was like a 300-page book. It was kind of like this. It kind of looked like, it didn't look like, must have had pictures in it because it was kind of this size, maybe a little smaller. He said it had like 300 pages in it. And I was like, you know what? If you read all 27,000 Marvel comics and write a book about it, I expect you to have some special insight on them.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine that he does.
Yeah, when I imagine reading all 27,000 Marvel comics, yeah, I'm gonna get pretty bored after a while. And but I don't imagine if I'm not very good at describing literature concepts, there's no point in writing that book.
Artistic concept. I think Darkseid originally, when Kirby drew him, was about the Thing size. I would say 5'10", 6 foot at best. Now he's a monster.
Yeah.
Now he's an 8 foot tall monster.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Convention Mode Pala.
I was on the 4-color fossils again last Wednesday.
Yeah, I missed that episode.
But I showed a couple of books. I even said something nice about Gene Colan, since I'm not the biggest. Unlike everybody else, I am not a big Gene Colan fan. But
I'm a middling Gene Colan fan.
But I got these from the shelf, the 4-issue Tomb of Dracula mini with the Epic logo, which I think is probably this to me is probably Gene Colan's best art in the history of Gene Colan.
Yeah. I've read most Marvel comics from 61 to 82. That's probably when I read most Marvel comics too, from 61 to 82, I would guess. Maybe to 83. That's about it.
I was just doing the math on how long it would take to read 27,000 comics.
Yeah.
That's just a little over an hour a comic for a long, long damn time.
Well, it's not going to take you an hour a comic.
And let's not forget that about 25% of those comics are written by Roy Thomas.
Well, those ones could take you an hour.
Yeah, so that'd be what.
I'm a medium on King. Yeah, I like some of his stuff. I don't like some of his other stuff. I could read his Tomb of Dracula all day. I could read his Night Force all day. But some of his other stuff, his Iron Man, like I said, I'm middling on him. But one thing I found, I only met Gene Colan once, and it was near the end of his life. At a little local Comic Con, a New Jersey a Comic Con that was in a New Jersey high school, and he was there and he was drawn, and I found it interesting because I found in his later years his art looked very distorted to me. This is the last 5-10 years of his life. He was really old by then. And then when I saw him drawing, I understood it. Because at the end of his life, he couldn't see very well.
Right.
So he was drawing this close to the paper. So when you look at Gene Colan's later stuff, when you look at it up close, it makes sense. But when you step away from it, it's kind of distorted because he's never seeing the whole overall picture.
Right.
And I found that kind of interesting and a sort of an expression of how an artist, sort of an extreme expression of how an artist sees affects his work.
Yeah, sure does. Yeah.
But yeah, he really looks distorted at the end. What does he say? Daredevil run is very lackluster to me. The highlights were definitely once again, his Daredevil run was fine, but not my favorite Gene Colan stuff. And the one thing I only noticed about Gene Colan fairly recently is I used to make fun of me and other people of sort of like 90s comic good girl art. because when some random guy drew, the sexy woman in her superhero outfit, and you can see both boob cleavage and butt cleavage in the same shot. It's like, oh wow, he is really breaking her spine.
Yeah,
it's like
so many drawings like that. It's so funny.
And I didn't notice till a few years ago. Gene Colan did that all the time with both men and female. He wasn't doing it to be sexy. He just did so much twisting of the body. Sometimes with like Daredevil, it's like, wow, Daredevil has cleavage and butt cleavage in the same shot. But you really didn't really stand out to me because it wasn't done to be sexy. It was done because he just distorted the figure a lot to get action into the pose.
Yeah,
but I was like, yeah, Gene Colan, he's one of those butt cleavage, boob cleavage guys.
women don't bend like that, though.
Evening Comic Book Invest. Oh, hold on. Since Comic Crack is here, I have to show off.
Oh, I thought he was going to try to do the butt chest thing at this.
Yeah, I'm like, go off.
This is my new corner rounder that I was talking about last week. Look at that thing for rounding the corners. And it's really not that much difference from one of this and my little hand one, except this big lever, and it's heavy and solid. Because it's kind of got the same type. There's the cutting blade right there. Yeah. And it goes and it sits down into a die down the bottom, and you put the card in here, and then you move this, and it cuts the card.
That long handle makes it look like a trebuchet.
Yeah, but it's a lot easier to use than my old one. But it's really not that much more efficient than the $20 hand one in turn. It's like I have to, and you also have to move the handle fast. It's like boom, boom, in order to get it to cut the lamination properly. So it's like boom, boom, and then sometimes I turn it over and do the other side too. I was practicing with it, but it also came with it was in a box with a whole bunch of those little popcorn things. So I didn't notice two parts that came with it. One part is this tiny little metal pin. I have no idea where this goes. I have no idea. No idea why it's in the box,
it's important.
where it goes.
Right.
It doesn't seem.
That's what they say about reassembling engines.
Yeah, I was using it without, and it also came with this piece of aluminum set at a square angle. I don't know what this is for. Is it for like holding? Holding the card.
It might be to calibrate it if you replace the blades.
Well, there are. You know what? Maybe it could be for that, because there are also. I had to calibrate it by moving there's two little Allen wrench keys here that make these move. So maybe I would have to set this in here somehow and calibrate it.
Does it fit behind the blades?
Maybe it fits behind the blade. Let's see. Yeah, it fits behind there too. Seems to move. I don't know.
Okay.
It must have something to do with calibration. You're right. But yeah, that's my new corner rounder.
Oh,
giant ka-chunk thing for rounding the corner.
Saul's comment there is kind of painful.
Is it asking for trouble if it probably is, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is there a problem with using scissors?
Yeah, it takes too much time and you can't get them right. When you're rounding 40 card corners, that's 160 corners you're rounding with scissors. Good luck.
It's not as accurate either.
Yeah, it's nowhere near as accurate. I don't know if you could do a stack. I have not tried that yet.
Well, it's probably more uniform that way too.
Maybe you could. But I was also then, to get even more maniacal about it, I had it out in the garage and I was rounding the corners and getting them. Then I was like, Then my mouse sander was right next to me. I was like, ooh, I turn that on and run the corner around the edge. I can get the smoothest corner possible. So I was getting all even crazier with my rounding the corners. I haven't made any actual cards
Like
yet.
a kid in a candy store, right?
Yeah.
Nerd.
Power Girl boob window was famous for being changed. That's for true.
It was. That's true.
Could be used at a Jewish bris, fast and accurate. That's my go-to joke with the kids, man.
Yeah.
Go to a fair with a roller coaster. Just throw a couple of nuts and bolts in the roller coaster car to make anyone instantly. There you go. I never thought of that before.
I don't think you want those nuts and bolts coming back out while the ride's moving.
Take it apart. Yeah, but I'm so happy with that corner rounder so far. Even though I haven't been able to make any cards yet because I think my printer started dying.
Yeah, the one that Terrence and I were talking about is just a little handheld one.
Yeah,
nowhere near as big as that one. Excuse me.
One of these little handheld corner rounder, where the mechanism really isn't much different in this. All you're doing is pushing down on that little blade, and there's a little die in there too that it presses up against. But this dulls so quickly. And it also came with here's a second size blade that's all wrapped up in cellophane right now. I can replace. I think that's a 1/4 inch rounder, and this is like a 3/8 inch rounder or something.
Yeah, you can get them for all different kinds of radiuses.
Yeah.
I bet with a wider blade, I can cut cheese with that thing.
You could.
You're cutting
Little-
cheese, man.
Only small pieces of cheese, but cheese.
No. I just replaced the blade with a wider one that goes.
Oh, with an even wide. Oh, a
Yeah.
really wide one.
That's
Uh-huh.
called
But
a
it's got-
sword, fellow.
You'd have to cut out the hole because there's a hole in the bottom it goes through too. So the blade goes through a hole that's up against a die that it presses against.
No, that's
you
too much
need
work
to-
then.
Yeah, way too much work.
Too much work to cut the cheese.
Lost a bunch of change in my on a Space Mountain once upon a time. Way before cell phones and debit cards.
Yeah, but if you
When
cut
Powell-
cheese properly, it's worth the effort.
Post his convention report.
I'm going to the
Let's see,
convention
what-
tomorrow,
Ah.
and I'm going to be filming the exhibits. And if I'm not mistaken, Mind the Comics promised that he was going to come out of his lair and pay a visit to the real world.
Wow. Huh. Next time, Friar Tuck, put some nuts and bolts in your pocket so they can fall out on the roller coaster and scare everybody else.
Yeah, that's just what the insurance companies love to hear.
Let me show off a comic I got this week. The latest Usagi Dragon Bellow conspiracy, issue number 5. And this is a long Usagi story. I think it's 12 issues. And this kind of wrapped up one story arc.
Right.
It was like and this first story there was going to be a rebellion. This one guy had gotten himself guns. This one whatever they call one lord got himself some guns and was stockpiling them so he could go against the emperor and be the shogun. But Usagi got wind of it, and there's some ninjas involved and this and that, and it took him 5 issues to kind of resolve that first part of the story. So now it's like, I guess we're going to get even more. But this is the reprint that's colored for the first time.
Okay.
Just really nice. Like, I have the original black and white of this, but I haven't read it since 1989.
Right.
So it's like reading a new comic to me. And I'd like to complain for a moment about self-covered comics, because the covers are so freaking delicate. I got like a bend in my. I don't know if this happened before I got to it or in the car ride home in the bag, but it's like I got like there's a bend in that cover right there, and it's like that's just because the cover's so freaking delicate.
Yeah.
It's the
I'm not
same
a fan of those either.
page as the inside.
Stan recently, actually yesterday, just posted that one of the upcoming trades that IDW is doing, they're not going to do a hardcover version of.
Ah.
But Stan is trying to get that published from the third party, to do a
Ah.
hardcover version of that. So I thought that was interesting. I don't understand why IDW wouldn't continue that. That long.
Maybe they didn't make any money. I don't know. Although it's
Very well
interesting.
could be. Yeah.
On the Usagi Yojimbo Facebook page, I saw a hardcover collection of Space Usagi.
Yeah.
But I think it's only in Germany. I was like, oh, because I looked at it because I was like, oh, cool, Space Usagi. When is this coming out? And I clicked on the link.
Came
and
out a
it
long
brought
time.
me to a German site where the whole book was in German. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, Space
Released
Usagi is from several years back.
Yeah, that's that's from the early 90s.
Well, there were
was like
two
two or three
Space Usagi series, and then they were a few years apart.
Yeah, I have all the Space Usagi stuff already, but cool to get a collection.
Right.
Space Usagi is just like regular Usagi Yojimbo, only in space.
Only in space. Yeah.
Instead of being in feudal Japan.
And instead of pigs in space, you have rabbits in space.
Yep. Comic Crack is excited that you'll be posting a video, Paolo.
I will be posting several videos. I'm not expecting to do a live one unless Mind the Comic shows up. Then I will do a live video with the two of us.
And by the way, since Daisy Line had mentioned that she picked up some Mouse Guard comics, the guy who does Mouse Guard is doing the covers to Usagi Yojimbo, the Dragon Bellow Conspiracy.
His artwork is lovely.
And if you follow David Peterson on Twitch, you can actually watch some of the ones he does as he does them.
You can see his process.
Yep, sure can.
That's interesting.
That is interesting. How much of it does he do by hand and how much on the computer?
It varies. It's a mixture, but it really varies, I think, depending on the piece that he's doing. I love his coloring. His coloring is great.
Mm-hmm.
Comic Crack is finally on the Usagi bandwagon.
We hooked Terrence. He is now a convict to Usagi-dom.
Live video. You better be there, Mind the Comics.
But they'll speak Portuguese, and we won't understand a damn word they're saying.
No. We're gonna make a special one. All of my videos will be in English, so I can explain to you exactly what I'm filming. We're gonna have the 80th anniversary of Wonder Woman. I think there's gonna be an Akira exhibit. There's a Lucky Luke exhibit, and there's a Michel Vaillant exhibit.
You better show up to the con and film a video with Paolo. That's what he's talking about.
You said you were coming down, that you were finally leaving the Hobbit hole.
Yep.
I will be live if you're there. If not, I'm just going to record videos, and I'll post them later.
We were talking about height earlier. Does that mean that Gus is Hobbit sized?
No, he lives in a hole in the ground. It doesn't come out because the sun is out there.
Oh, okay. So it's Punxsutawney Phil in Portugal.
Yeah. So it's actually Gollum.
Yeah.
I'm
love
okay
to have
with
one of
comics.
those Hobbit houses.
I'm okay with regular comics. I just want a cover stock, not a self-covered comic.
I agree. I'm not a fan of the self-cover stock either. See, Paolo, he's already given you pushback. So.
You suck.
He's not coming down to meet you.
So does that mean he's Usagi Yojimbo?
I think Paolo hired my attorneys to file a court order for you to attend. They agreed to take the case only if Paolo also films cheerleaders.
But we also know that Gore's attorneys are Dewey Cheatham and House.
I'll tell you a story once about not quite cheerleaders, but dancing girls. Early 2000s, I was still working at Marvel. It was I had one of my early digital cameras. So before work, I used to it's when I first started learning street photography. So I liked to kind of walk around in the area, pre 9 o'clock, and maybe take some street photos. I didn't know what I was doing then with street photos, but I was learning. And one time, in the middle of Times Square, because Marvel was on 40th Street then, so I walked up to Times Square a couple blocks away. They had a Broadway show doing a performance out on the street in the middle of Times Square. It was an Elvis show called Jailhouse Rock. So they had about 20 dancers. I think they were almost all women. There was probably a couple of guys in these, striped jail outfits and little short skirts, dancing around and putting on a show for everybody. And I got back to Marvel. I was like, they should have dancing girls every morning before work. That put me in a much better mood than I usually am in. I need more dancing girls. So that's why Gore Vidal wants you to film those cheerleaders. Those lawyers are no joke, so film them. I still have some. I made a photo out of that. One of those. I made one of my photos out of one of those dancing girls pictures. Jailhouse Rock. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
We don't have anything music related this year, but we will have some bits about. We're right now. They're publishing a graphic, a sort of classics illustrated collection. Most of the books are made in France, but since the collection was lacking Portuguese classics, they adapted two famous novels from the 19th century, and there's going to be, I think one of them is going to have an exhibit. They're going to do a presentation of the latest one, and the writer who's the adapter, who is usually a translator, and he complained about having to turn a 200 plus novel into a 48-page graphic novel.
That's always a problem.
There is an art to it. It's not as simple as most people think.
Yeah, and
Greg Russell is one of the best at doing that.
I think he is just the best, period.
Yeah.
And those Portuguese writers from the late 19th century could be verbose.
Yeah.
Even if it was only 200 pages.
Like Stan Lee verbose.
More.
Roy Thomas verbose.
Let me put it this way. One of the novels that was adapted, I'm pretty sure they had to cut out the entire first chapter, because that thing is famous. We have to study that novel for 10th grade Portuguese, and but everybody remembers the first chapter, because that thing is like a Century 21 advert for an old house. It's describing in minute detail every piece of furniture in that house.
So it's like Tom Clancy wrote it.
Wow.
Also, turns out that the two people in love are brother and sister.
It totally sounds like an Anne Rice book.
No, wasn't that who was that person with the two kids in the attic? Andrews.
VC Andrews.
Yeah, Flowers in the Attic.
Flowers in the Attic.
VC Andrews, I think, was my mom had that.
Andrews. Yeah, everybody.
Yeah, they were really popular in the 80s.
Oh my God, every girl in my school was so into that book. And when I read it, I was like, ugh. Like, they're brother and sister.
Never read it. They were the pre-Lannisters.
I never saw Game of Thrones. So.
Well, that book is kind of a comment. That book is kind of a comment on the fall of the British monarchy, because King Edward had no children, and that's King Edward had children. Then it was Queen Victoria, and there was a succession problem. I can't remember which one.
The succession problem is your memory did not succeed in remembering it.
Yeah, and there's the thing with royal houses. They're not brothers and sisters, but they might as well be, because it's first cousins marrying first cousins, and then your children are marrying their first cousins. So
Gore Vidal wants to read that description of the house.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if it exists in English. It ought to be. It's called. It's named after the family Mayesh. So I don't know if it exists. The writer of that one is Asad Queiroz. The other novel adapts Camilo Castelo Branco, who is known for also for creating for writing the translation to Solomon's Mines, and he appears as co-author of the book because he changed everything. So he was like El Sprague de Camp in that regard.
Oh boy.
The
We all
To
know
Kill
how
a Mockingbird graphic novel that I read this summer, I
remember you talking about that.
was terrific. That's the best adapted graphic novel I've read in a long, long time.
If you bring up even the name of El Sprague de Camp around Conan fans, you're going to start an argument somewhere.
Yeah.
But speaking of Roy Thomas, I was making more of these cards this week. Roy Thomas comics are good for chopping these up because there's word balloons everywhere, and I like to put word balloons on the card. But today I also actually made I haven't posted it yet. I made a how-to video on how I made these step by step.
Oh,
Just because I felt like it. I was like, I may as well make a step-by-step video showing people how to paste these up if they want. Ooh, we forgot about
Blu-ray extras you haven't seen yet.
Yeah. We got the muscle guy ad on one.
I remember that one.
What does he say? What does it say in the bottom? Free, powerful, muscles, fast.
You should do one for the Red Count Dante ad.
I haven't run into one yet in these comics, but I'm going to put him on one of these.
I love that. That's great.
Count Dante.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like one El Sprague de Camp novel. Yeah, I remember I bought it. I bought the Portuguese edition, and I started. Okay, the theme was time travel. Okay, whatever. It's El Sprague de Camp, time travel. Let's take a look. Back it was made back when science fiction novels were cheap paperbacks, unlike today when they're all deluxe format, whatever. And I started reading it, and this is his version of Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court. Huh. And it is interesting, but it was made purposefully to say I'm a better writer than Mark Twain. When he totally misses the point of the story. Yeah, but he totally misses the point of the story. It's not. Yes, a Connecticut Yankee is not historically accurate, but it's not meant to be.
Right.
Right.
Is Daisy cooking potato chips? That's Friar Tuck wants to know.
Daisy made a chicken noodle casserole with cheese, and I sprinkled potato chips on top to give it a little bit of crunch.
Did you make enough for everybody?
I did. Actually, come on over. I made a ton of it.
I should do some sort of Magic the Gathering card game with these cards. I'll have to film it somehow. Conan versus Star Wars.
I bet you Spence could think up a good Magic the Gathering style.
You should make 3 just for the Rip, Read, and Slab.
And you can ask Terrence to work out the mechanics.
Well, we already have the game. We just have to do it with these particular cards. Oh, and one comic I got this week was a money-back guarantee special. Well, hold on a couple. Are you familiar with the Cryptozoic DC card games? Making extended cards would be awesome. I'd buy some for. I'm not familiar with that one.
Not either.
Mm-hmm.
But I was actually drawing on some of these cards too. Not quite extended art, but I was just drawing with the white is me scratching away with an X-Acto knife. So that's kind of like scratch board and ink. I like the way that monster came out.
I like the scratch board monsters. They're weird.
Scratch board monster. Matter of fact, I just posted a video on Instagram saying, how do you make your grocery bill go up? Buy art supplies at the grocery store. So I was at the grocery store today. I bought new Sharpies, silver ones and black ones for drawing on those, because these modern Magic the Gathering cards, the surface of them is so slick and glossy.
Right.
That it's like Sharpies are the only thing I found that stick to them. My regular ink markers don't. India ink just smears on them. And I bought some silver ones because, why not have some silver ones too to draw on them.
I like silver ink on black paper.
But let me show you the money back guarantee. My Roy was there, the LCS owner this week. He's been away, and he's like, I got this comic. This comic came out. He said, bring it home with you. Read it. If you like it, pay for it next week. Otherwise, bring it back next week. I was like, okay. He said, it's sort of like Berlin, but not really. It's called Corset. And I think it's a Scout comic. Nice, thick cover stock. Right. It's probably about 42 pages for $5. So it's a good deal, too. The art, I remember flipping through this 2 weeks ago and putting it back, because the art looked a little too Disney manga-esque for me. But it read really well. It was one of those where just looking at the art doesn't thrill me, but reading it is good. And it's the story of, I think it takes place in Berlin in some time ago. Now, the city of Schwarzburg, wherever that might be. Paolo, do you know that city? Or is it a made-up one?
No.
See, anytime you say Schwartz anything, it makes me think of Mel Brooks.
Yeah. Well, but it might be. I recently found out there's about 17 cities named Lisbon in the USA.
I think that, if I'm not mistaken, I think there's a Springfield in over 40 states in the United States.
There's a Middletown everywhere. Every place has got a Middletown. And it takes place, I think, it's supposed to be like the 1800s by the fashions they're wearing.
Can you hold that up a little closer so I can see the art better?
Here, let me solo on it so you can see it.
Okay.
Yeah, the arts. So it's not really my style of art, but the storytelling was really good. I enjoyed it. I'm actually gonna pay for it.
Reminds me of like two different art styles kind of mashed together.
Yeah, there's something I can't even. It's like there's something manga-esque. There's something Disney-esque. There's something I don't know what-esque. But it's a one-shot too. So, and it takes place, like I said, in 1807. I don't even know if they give a year or a play, but it seems like a European fashion house 150 years ago.
Speaking of European fashion, I was going to ask, since Gus mentioned when we talked about Berlin that he complained about they had the buttons on the wrong side.
Yeah.
Of their jackets. I was going to ask, in that one, did they get the buttons on the correct side?
I haven't noticed. As a matter of fact, I don't see any buttons when I look. Nothing is buttoned.
Gotcha.
Oh, hold on. His buttons. I see some buttons there. They are going. They're the right way, right? Because they're like mine. The buttons themselves. No, they might be wrong. Hold on. I can't even tell. No, I think they're right. Gus, here, we'll see if Gus is still here. Are those buttons right or wrong?
They're correct for a men's jacket.
They're correct. He's a men's. He's the big fashion guy. He's the fashion critic.
I think that's what most of the artists get wrong is they don't reverse them when they do women's fashions.
Yeah, they don't know women's.
I was a fashion major before I was an illustration major. So there.
Gotcha.
I don't see any women's buttons. The women's buttons appear to be right down the middle.
It gets the Gus seal of approval. Those are good.
Those are good.
Fenner brings up an interesting point. He's talking about Eric Powell's Ed Gein graphic novel.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Yeah,
He's definitely a modern master.
I love Eric Powell, but I have no desire whatsoever to see do anything with Ed Gein.
I am not a serial killer guy.
It's like one of my favorite artists working on a subject that I don't care about at all.
Hold on. Before we move on to the whiteboard thing, I actually do. What's the name of that? The Ed Gein comic.
What is the name of it? Did you see what Eddie Gein has done, or something of that effect?
Oh, I think we got double Paolos. I'm removing him from the screen, and we somehow got two Paolos. I do not know anything about whiteboard markers, so I have no opinion on them. But it takes place. There's a big fashion designer having his latest show. It's all about his latest show and how everybody's getting excited for it and this and that. And there's sort of a little peasant girl who stumbles onto it and becomes a star. She becomes part of the story, not quite a star, but part of the story. And then the reveal, I'll spoil the reveal in it because nobody cares. It turns out the fashion designer is an automaton that the sort of original fashion designer created as his assistant. Then the original fashion designer died, and the automaton has been making the fashions ever since. And there's a whole thing with him trying to figure out if he's human or not, and his assistants trying to keep the secret. But I really it had a nice poignancy to it.
Now that you ruined the story arc, that actually makes me want to read it now. That sounds
exactly. They said that's the hook. That's what makes you want to read it. That's the. I mean, it's
the
not
twist
that
ending it. Yeah, like
it's a done in one.
Well, it's very easy to find out if it's an automaton or not. And a tortoise is on the floor upside down. You don't help it up. Why?
That's the Blade Runner test. But actually, you could tell he was an automaton just by looking at him. He didn't. That's why they always kept him secret, and he never saw anyone in this. That was part of the story too.
But I thought in Blade Runner they were just artificial people, not robots.
They were, but same. Yeah, that's just the joke.
I don't know. I appreciated the joke. I just get, Yeah,
you're ruining this joke. We know.
Well, like I said, brought back the thoughts of like the Cylons and how they were exactly the same.
They're the same but different.
But in the original series, they were nothing like humans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you like Victorian England, if your wife likes Victorian England stories, Corset might be good for. I like that. I enjoyed it.
And speaking of that, you're talking about the eye going back and forth. Does that mean Kit from Knight Rider was a Cylon?
It could be.
It was. That was the in joke.
Right. The Fenner's point about the Goon omnibus paperbacks. This is a problem though. If you can find them, the Dark Horse hardcovers are really good. The third one, you're going to have to spend an arm and a leg to find these days.
What's weird about Eric Powell, though, is I'm not a huge fan of his Goon stuff.
I do
enjoy it.
I love it.
I like it. But Hillbilly was so much better to me.
Hillbilly's fantastic. I don't know if we'd mentioned this before or not. Tim knows about this, but there's a certain page, and I can't remember what number of Hillbilly it was. This is one of the earlier issues, like one of the first 9 issues, where the main character is going to the town to confront the locals that were going to kill a bear. And there's just one page in there. It's like I'm not going to ruin it for everybody, but the bear asked him, said, "What do you think you're doing? Why are you doing this? This is stupid." And his response, which I'm not going to tell here, is like a gut punch to the stomach.
Yeah, like Hillbilly.
Emotionally, it was like, damn, you just destroyed me, Eric, just like that.
I liked the Goon, but I love Hillbilly. Hillbilly to me cemented Eric Powell as I'll buy anything he does in general. Now,
Well,
that's how
Hillbilly
much I
also
like.
reminded me. Are you familiar with the Silver John stories that were done by Manly Wade Wellman?
No.
No.
They're kind of that similar in terms. You have like this guy wandering around in the Appalachian Mountains, not Appalachian for people outside of the area. That's Appalachian. Otherwise, you're not from here. But it's kind of what that reminds me of. It's kind of like a cross between that and like a wandering Conan-esque figure, having adventures in the mountains.
Russ Heath said his girlfriend was a fashion artist and taught him about using negative space. Yeah.
Hey, if you can teach
learn
Russ Heath
somewhere.
how to do something, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Russ Heath was excellent.
It's excellent, Scott. It written by Harold Schlechter, true crime writer.
Gotcha.
He handled very well about how the town has dealt with it, not him drawing gory stuff.
That's
Okay.
good. I'm so burnt out. There's 3 or 4 subjects I'm burnt out on. I don't have anything to do with. One's the mafia, the other's vampires, the other is zombies, and the 4th one is serial killers.
But I still love the Rick Geary treasure.
Yeah, now that is, I'll give Rick Geary. I love Rick Geary's stuff. That doesn't bother me.
But that's so different than your normal stuff. It's like it's kind of just the facts, but told with Rick Geary storytelling and artwork. So
exactly, it's the fact that Rick Geary is doing it, which what makes it fun.
Yeah.
So maybe I should read the Ed Gein thing, but it's just not
Eric Powell.
I thought I would have any interest in it.
The serial killer thing, that's the only genre that I'm not burned out on in that list. It's like I never thought I'd get burned out on zombies, but there it is. As soon as vampires turned sexy, I was burned out on them because it was always.
Well, there's a couple people I'll give passes to. I have to give Bill Stout a pass anytime he does zombies because he was the production designer on Return of the Living Dead. Plus, Bill Stout, and then I'll also give Mike Mignola a pass anytime he has something to do with vampires.
Fair enough. But I'm just in general burned out on the genre and the whole sparkly vampires thing. Good God. Is there anything more boring?
There is a pretty infamous cover that was done. It was the Goon series, and it's just the Goon on the front cover, and the blurb, which is bleeped out, is like sparkly vampires. Are you blanking kidding me?
By the way, that's a terrible cover.
I don't think so.
I just think it's terrible because the color you can barely tell. It's like the back of a woman on a fashion stage.
But it looks like she's got her. It looks
That's
like
not what I thought it was. So maybe it is a terrible cover.
Yeah.
It almost looks like a steampunk balloon for her head.
Yeah. Or it looks like she's like a brain stuck on top of a body.
Yeah. It looks like brains, but that's her hairdo somehow. And this, I guess, is her corset in the back.
Maybe it is a bad cover because it's not what I thought it was, but that's fine.
Right, it's a bad cover. It's not very eye-catching.
I thought she was supposed to be like Pinocchio. The arms look made of wood, and so does the back of the head.
No. She's a regular person. All these fashion models are regular people. This is supposed to be a regular person in a corset because you can see all the people down here looking at her. Since she's on stage, or at least 4 people looking at her. But it's like, and then the back cover is the same thing with the logo in the middle. What's that?
Yeah.
But it's like, wouldn't you want to do this from the front? Show her so you can see her pretty face rather than her ear. Yeah. Maybe get some. I mean. If I don't know a whole lot about corsets, but I know there's a lot of corset nuts out there, and they want some pushed up boobs because who doesn't?
I bet if any of those guys actually had to wear one, they'd reverse their stance.
But if you're going to sell something and name it corset and feature a corset on the cover, why wouldn't you give us some pushed up boobs? It's just weird.
I'm gonna have to agree with that. Like, if you're gonna, I mean, what's the point of involving a corset? if you're not going to have the, kaboob.
Yeah,
But then you get to make the joke, is this what you wanted on the cover? And he says, of course it is. Can you bring up Fenner's comment about reading Steve Mannion? Steve Mannion is an awesome guy. Yeah, I've read the stuff that he's done for Spook House. Tim and I were at Heroes Con a few years ago, and my phone battery just completely went dead. And I was trying to call Tim, and I couldn't find him. We're getting ready to go home or whatever. And Steve kept him company outside while they were waiting for me. But Steve's a really nice guy. If you get a chance to talk to him, he's a really cool dude.
Eric Powell did awesome covers on Arkham Asylum, Living Hell. I haven't seen those ones, but he did some awesome Marvel monster stuff like 15 years ago now.
That's right up his alley too.
Yeah. He did a bunch of he did like a story or two for the Marvel when Marvel was bringing back their monsters for a little while. I have a hardcover of it.
Right. You can tell in his art style, he's got a lot of, it's like somebody took Jack Davis and Chuck Jones and threw them together.
Huh. We need a teenage mutant magic zombie vampire pirate space era opera emo dinosaurs comic. Just saying, we can get all the genres.
Wasn't that Munden's Bar? No, Eric Powell's not a jerk. No, he's a really nice guy when we met him. I guess you catch anybody at the wrong time, but
see, I'm not tired of zombies because I was never into them. Zombies never did anything for me. I bought The Walking Dead its whole run and enjoyed it.
Right.
But I've never been a zombie. I'm not a horror fan. I was never a zombie fan. So I would take each zombie
I just got
project.
sick of hearing about them every 5 minutes while The Walking Dead was really popular.
Yeah, I think The Walking Dead really kind of did it for me. Plus, every bad filmmaker jumped on the zombie bandwagon, and it's there are really good zombie movies out there, like plenty of them. But what was that recent one where they're all like in the mall, stuck in there? I can never remember.
Recent one? You mean the one from 20 years ago?
Yeah.
I forget the name of it, but yeah, they're all stuck in the mall.
That one's one of my favorite ones, like where she's driving away in the car and the dude's running after the car, and then he just gets distracted by the guy on the lawnmower and he veers off. I mean, that's brilliant.
I just find it funny what we think of as recent sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, it was, it came out in 2002. That wasn't 20 years ago, right?
That's true.
Nah.
I've not read Zombie Tramp.
Well, I watched so many old movies that 20 years ago is recent in comparison to the stuff that I usually watch.
Well, in comparison to stuff that's actually recent, it's not recent.
Yeah,
Eric Powell did the art on early Big Trouble in Little China. Yeah, I was never a Big Trouble in Little China fan, so I
love that movie. It's great.
Oh, I love
Powell
that
was from
movie.
EC in a different time, and he could be. He's definitely got a style different.
He's definitely got some influence, especially from Jack Davis.
Dawn of the Dead is in the mall.
There you go, Dawn of the Dead. I can never remember.
Yeah, Mr. Gretzky's here.
They've all got.
The girl in Zombie Tramp is a zombie, but isn't much of a tramp. She's topless most of the time to attract food. Hey, there's a strategy for you. There is a strategy.
Wow.
Yeah, but like I said, I enjoyed The Walking Dead, but I can't. Besides that, I haven't read a ton of zombie stuff.
The only other zombie thing I can remember even remotely liking was Guy Davis did a zombie-related series, and I can't remember the name of it. It's something about the end of the world. I'm not sure, but I'll give Guy a pass.
Yeah, I like Guy's stuff.
It's a shame he's not working in comics anymore.
Yeah, he was good.
There's a long story there that you can kind of read between the lines and piece things together, but I'd actually like to know kind of what happened.
Yeah. Reading that Michael Zulli stuff in Puma Blues that Bissett wrote about or something. He was just like, Stephen Zulli tried to make it in comics and just got screwed over, and so many deals fell through that it was like, oh well. I guess that happens.
A lot.
Especially if you're not a monthly comics guy.
Right.
I still like. Yeah, I watched. I read some of the comic, and the comic was actually. The show was better than the comic.
I liked that show. That was good.
Yeah.
It was well
And
cast.
the lead in that show just started a new sitcom called Ghosts, which I think is on Thursday nights, based on a British show, and I'm enjoying it because she's good in it too.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even remember the last time that I started watching a new sitcom.
Yeah, me neither. But I like that woman who
God,
the chicken eyes.
it's been over 20 years, I would say.
I try out sitcoms all the time. I like comedy.
I only started watching sitcoms when they reach the 4th or 5th season. That means they're good.
Yeah, Ghosts, not bad. No, there are some. Matter of fact, I rewatched a couple of them. There's a couple of one-season sitcoms I'm rewatching. Like one is called Go On. It stars what's his name, Chandler Bing, as like a sports radio guy who's in group therapy. Lasted one season, 20 episodes. I liked it. 3 years later, I'm watching it again because why not? I don't remember them, and I liked it. And there was another one I watched. This what is it called? Abby's. It was only 10 episodes. It was on like 2 or 3 years ago. It was just about this woman. It was sort of like a bar sitcom where this woman was running a bar in her backyard, and it's about all the people. And it's not even the greatest sitcom ever, but it makes me. It's a feel good kind of show. It's just one of those shows that. So I haven't seen it in a few years, so I watched it this summer just to kind of hang out with the characters again. It's only 10 episodes, so occasionally there's like a little short show that I like that I save on my hard drive and watch some other year.
Right.
Greg the Bunny is one of those shows. It's Greg the Bunny ran for 2 seasons, and it's one of the biggest tragedies ever because the first season was absolutely brilliant. It's a fantastic show. And then some executive got a hold of it to try and improve it for season 2, and they just wrecked the whole thing. Like they redesigned the bunny, the jokes are bad and everything, but I love watching season 1 over and over again. Highly recommend Greg the Bunny.
Yeah, I've watched Blacklist. That's a good one. I haven't watched it over again. I remember watching Briscoe County Jr. back when it first came out and thought it was okay. Yeah. And then like 10 years later, I knew this woman whose dog, she named her dog Briscoe. And I was like, is that after Briscoe County Jr.? She's like, yes, I love that show. I was like, you're the one fan of that show?
Anything that Bruce Campbell's ever done is going to have somewhat of a built-in audience.
Yeah. But it was funny. Her dog was named Briscoe. That was like the only mention I'd heard of that show in a decade.
That's one of the many
I do remember
my to watch later. That may get around to sometime in the next 25 years or so.
And another comic I got this week is Ice Cream Man doing its experimental stuff again. And it did a pretty good job with it this issue. He told him, check this out. Please rotate your book 90 degrees clockwise. And then it starts out the story. It's in the top of a tree. And for a few pages, he's climbing down the tree telling you the story because it's the story of his family tree. And then we start getting some of his family in it telling their own story. And it's this guy who's like, I'm doomed because of my family tree. And he runs into the Ice Cream Man here somewhere. A really interesting storytelling in it.
I like how he's got buzzards sitting in the tree, too.
What was that?
I like how he's got buzzards sitting in the tree.
Yeah, he's got buzzards in the tree. And here's the end. He goes down into the roots of the tree to meet his dead family. And sometimes I didn't think that, because sometimes this stuff works and sometimes it doesn't in Ice Cream. I always appreciate that they try different stuff like this. And I really had my doubts the first 6 or 8 pages that this was going to, but they pulled it together. And I was like, wow, I really did enjoy that. And then at the end, it tells you, you know, you can turn your book back to its normal orientation now. Whoops.
It's funny.
There, that's better. So even those two couple of pages were fun, but that was a pretty. Have any of you guys read The Ice Cream Man?
I have not.
A couple of issues at the beginning.
It's on Hoopla. So now that you got that on there, that's where I first read Ice Cream Man. Was on.
I could see somebody else doing a riff on that, but doing it with Norse mythology, where they're doing the tree is Yggdrasil, the world tree. I could see somebody doing that.
Just did the family tree with that, but it's like they've done a whole bunch of theme issues like that. Sort of the storytelling is a theme. Like this one, the theme was telling a story in a tree from page to page.
I can't look at an Ice Cream Man without thinking of Reggie from the Phantasm season series.
Ice Cream Man always surprises me. This issue included. Yeah,
that title just always makes me think of the Van Halen song "Ice Cream Man."
The Days and Nights of Molly Dodd was my favorite late night 80s. I remember hearing it. Can't find a DVD. Wow. I know that name, but I don't think I ever actually watched it. That was one of those you used to see on like cult hits shows, and then when some 90s article wrote something about about cult TV, that show would always come up on it. But I don't think I've heard it. I don't think I hear it mentioned anymore ever.
There's another one that kind of reminded me of that in regard to, like, you always heard about it in this cult status, was Pushing Up Daisies.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I heard that was really good. I forgot about it.
Yeah, I read Jeff Lemire's Royal City. I was half and half. I think by the end of it, he had abandoned what he started with it. But it's okay. It's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. You'll enjoy reading it. That's a good. Who wants to do a rip, read, and slab? I've got a few set up with labels. Hold on. Oh, we'll do this one. Comics from September 1951. Or do I have it in the right? Hold on. I don't think I have 51.
It in the right. This could be just about anything.
Yeah,
including leopards.
Let me guess.
There's Jungle Comics involved in this one.
There's going to be some misogyny, I bet.
Misogyny.
Misogyny.
There's definitely some danger to women and men, but mostly women. Let's see. Oh, Howler's here. Hold on.
Oh,
the danger to men.
Tim, how you doing? Can you hear us?
What's going on?
We're just about to do a rip, read, and slab, so you can participate. Hold on.
Before we do
Here
that,
we go.
Before we do that, Tim, for Fender's benefit, can you tell him the story about you and Steve Mannion waiting for me at Heroes Con when my phone battery died?
I could barely hear y'all again. This happened last time. This is amazing.
Can you
Get
hear
some
us?
earphones in there. Jack up your volume.
We're going to need an interpreter.
Can you understand us? No.
I can't understand. I'll work on it. Y'all go ahead.
Okay. We'll get him to tell us later.
No EC. I actually avoided EC ones. I think I went with Avon. Let's see.
So leopards.
Nope, no leopards. I told you it's crime.
Ah,
here we go.
crime.
Fixed it.
Okay.
Oh, it didn't. StreamYard is sharing a window. Oh, it's not in. I have to put it in there. There we go. Murderous gangsters.
Wow.
How did I guess that women would be in positions like that?
Because they sell books.
Oh, and don't interpret that as my being offended. I'm just it just cracks me up that it's like.
And I've got to bring this up since I always ran about this everywhere. Look at the color on the background of every one of those damn books.
Oh, it's every one. And,
Yep.
and these are all from September 1951. I swear that's the same woman too. Look at that. The same.
Yeah.
Probably
blonde
is.
with the,
Close. It's close. Yeah.
what is that called?
So-
a Marcel wave?
I don't know.
That's called that's a successful model who probably posed for pulps artists and stuff.
Right.
You know.
So are these dames or broads?
I'm gonna go with.
Murderous I
Is it-
never knew there was a comic named Murderous Gangsters either.
Crime
I-
River, baby.
I am going to read The Saint because that looks interesting. I'm going to slab Police Lineup because I would just love to have that drawing on my wall because she looks, I mean, just the look on both of their faces is priceless. And then I'm going to rip up Murderous Gangsters.
Uh-huh.
I'm just wondering if the Saint is the same character that.
Chico's
Probably not. Probably not in the 50s.
Is it the Saint from the movies and TV
That's
shows?
what I was thinking.
In
but
the,
none
in
of
the 50s, it was
probably not.
it was David Niven in the 50s.
Oh yeah, because that's the Saints logo up there, isn't it? A little line drawing with a halo on it.
I don't see a halo on that one.
Yeah,
It's-
I'm gonna.
I do now. I see the stick figure. I got
No, but he's drawn. If you look, he's drawn like David Niven. He was in the Saint.
Okay.
He was in the Saint radio show back in the 50s and 40s.
So I agree with Daisy that I'm gonna slap Police Lineup. But I'm going to read Murderous Gangsters because I want to read the story about Babyface Nelson, and I'm going to rip the Saint because the Saint is wanted for robbery. Well, of course he is. He's a thief.
Let's see. Fenner is going to rip the middle one, read the Saint, and slab the Murderous Gangsters. I think I'm going to slab the Murderous Gangsters too, just because I love that title.
I think I'm going to agree with Fenner's lineup there.
And I'm going to read Police Lineup and have to rip the Saint.
Ah,
I'm going to read the Saint and rip Police.
Let's see. Comic Crack is going to read Murderous Gangsters, rip Police Lineup, and slab the Saint. Okay.
We have a wide
wide variety of
opinions on this.
Yeah.
I like the variety. I'm going to slab the Saint because it's probably going to have fans outside of comics if you want value.
Yeah,
I'm going to actually read Police Lineup because of it's what's left over. See, I'm going to rip the Murderous Gangsters. I mean, I want you to look at that cover. It's the most professional. It looks the best. And I'm thinking it's an ironic title. I'm saying there's mob money behind that, and I'm not supporting them.
Actual gangsters were at least behind the distribution.
Just
It's an ironic title. They're like winking and nudging, like, we got our hands in everything. Did you hear about Jack Kirby when the mob? Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Did you ever hear that story about Jack Kirby when the mob or somebody like the mob came into a studio in the 40s trying to shake him down for protection money?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He got into a fist fight with him because that's what he was used to. It looks
He
like
said-
Errol Flynn.
Yeah.
Vincent Price.
Vincent Price. Nice.
It looks like a little like Vincent Price there, Errol Flynn, and that's David Niven because he was the Saint at the time, we are told.
Right.
But it's funny, I picked out these three covers and then realized that it was like the same model in each one.
Well, the Murderous
Same
Gangsters.
outfit too, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. These
I
two outfits are
think
the
that's
same.
more just what the female character was in pretty much every radio show back then. She was always the blonde with the shoulder length hair and the strapless dress and it's the same description in every thing, unless she's the villain, in which case she's 10
I'm
years
glad you
older
said
and
that. I'm going to stereotype a little bit here, but you said about she's the villain. Never trust a woman in evening gloves from the 40s and 50s.
Well, I was just going to say
the villain is always is more the brunette.
Yeah, the villain's always dark haired.
Yeah,
Red-haired villain back in those days.
and the
I like
redhead's
to say,
the wild card.
Vidal, you're either playing the game or you're not. You're
But the
playing the
reason
game, you gotta
in
rip
Police
something
Lineup
up.
is because she thought to wear those gloves and they hit her fingerprints.
Radio shows from the 40s and 50s are entertaining. I listened to a few. Yeah, I think Daisy Line listens to a lot of those.
The old time radio can be some good stuff.
It's mostly what I use YouTube for now. Old radio shows from the 40s to the 70s. Every now and then, a little bit of the 30s.
Yeah.
Yep, there are good ones like The Creaking Door and Escape.
Yep. Suspense. Oh yeah, the CBS one. Absolutely. Mystery Theater, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mystery Theater does a lot of those. Roswell Radio does a lot. Horror Theater has a lot of good ones. Even on Horror Theater, it's great because sometimes they'll play an entire abridged audiobook. Like they did Salem's Lot the other day. They did an abridged, dramatized audiobook, but it took like 4 hours to get through it.
There's nothing like being in the zone and like you're working around the house and you've got like a little playlist going, and then all of a sudden you hear Bones from Star Trek in a 1950s one. And then you find out the announcer says introducing whatever his name was that played him in his first radio show. And I'm like, oh my God,
And once again, I'd like to point out to our literal commenters, we're not actually ripping anything up. We don't have any of these comics. It's the game, okay? But you don't have to say, I'd never ripped those up. We know that.
Oh my God. I finally figured out who the girl on the Murderous Gangster reminds me of. I was thinking movie star. She looks like a girl named Summer Brewer I dated in 1991. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's totally the Barbara Stanwyck stereotype or the template.
I could also make the point for me. I could rip up all three just because they have yellow backgrounds.
Yeah.
Scott, the anti-yellow background guy.
Yep. Yeah. It's when I was listening to in a thing just from Horror Theater, it threw me because one of the voices sounded familiar to me, and I realized that it was my high school theater teacher. Did a whole bunch. He was a member of the Cape Cod Radio Theater.
About a week or so ago, I went back and watched the animated version of Big Guy and Rusty the Robot. Mm-hmm. And the voice actor, well, it turns it's voice actress actually, that did Rusty's voice is the same one that does Bobby on King of the Hill.
Wow. Interesting. I keep forgetting that it's always women who do the boys' voices in animation.
Right. So just totally random. By the way, hi everybody. Now that I can hear you, great to see y'all. It's awesome. But I had a real quick sidebar here. I had to talk to my director. I've had this case that's taken up my life. We're talking court. We're talking lawyers. And all this stuff, placement, paperwork that I'm doing that we find out we don't need, things like that. And then all of a sudden, my director called me Heller Mouse. He found my YouTube channel and wanted to know who y'all were. I denied everything, What are you talking about? What? You kept that under your head for years, didn't you?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's nothing like going down in the big building with all the executives, and all of a sudden you hear, "So, Howler Mouse, what's up?" You should
have told him that you're the Earth too, Howler Mouse.
Mm-hmm. So, comic books. What do you think I am? Some kind of nerd?
I let him know he was in the midst of a celebrity. No, I'm playing. I was like, going to get a little respect around here finally. No, I denied it all.
Let me show you the last comic I got for the week. It was only a 4-comic week for me, but this I think came out a week or two ago. Even it's A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance. Rick Remender and Andre Lima Araujo. How does that? Araujo.
Yeah, the U is its own syllable.
Over the U, so that really throws.
Yeah, and the U is also its own syllable.
Ah.
Also, there's a video of me talking to the guy at the Coimbra Festival 3 or 4 years ago. And funny thing, I used to have a photographer who did some work for our auto racing magazine, and he's that guy's cousin.
Oh, okay.
That one's on there. I enjoyed this one. It's it actually reminded me a little, for some reason, of probably because let me show you the artwork on it. It reminded me of what's his name? The monk. Jeff Darrow.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
The Cowboy.
Yeah, he's a fan.
Shaolin Cowboy.
Yeah, that's
Shaolin Cowboy. That's it. That it kind of reminded me a little of that because there was just so much visual storytelling in most of it,
right.
and really well done visual. And it was just kind of this guy, going about his day, and he runs into trouble eventually. Well, so it was, and what's interesting too is I heard. First, let me show you these dark panels, these dark pages. And I heard Sleepy Reader was complaining about these because what the artist was trying to do. Let me remove myself from this layout.
Well, if it's taking place at night, that would be where they would be.
Yeah,
dark.
I think that's what it was trying to do. It was that's what he was trying to get across. It was taking place at night,
right.
And as I was it was working for me in the mood of the story. But as I was reading it, I was like, I wonder if this would work for everybody. Because I imagine it also depends on how good your eyes are.
Yeah, that's true.
And Sleepy was complaining with these pages how unless he had it, and how good your light is. He had to go get a different light to see what was happening in the pages. Now I didn't because I was under light. But also it made me wonder, with printing variations, could some of these have printed too dark on some issues? Maybe.
Could. I mean, I would assume that we have some kind of a QA to inspect those.
But like I said, it worked for me. It didn't work for Sleepy. And it was like I was kind of thinking about that as I was reading it. I'm like, I wonder if this would not work for some people. And sure enough, I was watching Sleepy's video the next day, and he was like, that didn't work for me. I'm like, oh, interesting.
I haven't even read the book, and that's just the first thing I thought. With the darker panels, that means it's taking place at night.
Right. But that doesn't always. Sometimes it obscures it too much, is the thing.
It's like kind of you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I can see it working both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, Andre also has a series of his own. He wrote Andrew, called Man Plus. It's kind of it kind of looks a little bit like Ghost in the Shell, although it's in that art style.
Okay.
That he has over there.
Now you get me interested. This seems like a guy I need to check out then.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No one can wear yellow and no whistling.
I like
Scott, no yellow covers. He's tearing them all up.
But that also, the color yellow doesn't, but it's just how much they use it. So that means he would hate Charlie Brown's shirt. And I was trying to think, is there anybody that whistles other than the character that Peter Lorre played in the movie M?
The mermaid, the splash lady in Kill Bill 2, she whistled.
Daryl Hannah.
Yeah.
Have any of you guys ever read Fear Agent?
Just a tiny little bit, just enough to know I probably want to read more of it, but I haven't got around to it.
It's good. I have a funny story about Fear Agent though. In that, like, it may have been the first thing that Rick Remender, and I can't remember who drew it. It may have been the original Invincible artists. But I think it was the artist who made me pick it up in the beginning.
I think it was one of the earlier things he's done in his career, isn't it?
Right. It was an early Rick Remender thing too. So I picked it up, enjoyed it, put it on my pull list. Mm-hmm. And then after like 8 issues, they ended it and relaunched it as a new miniseries. And that just annoyed me.
Gotcha.
And I didn't get, and it's like the first issue didn't come into my comic shop, and I didn't put it in my pull list on time. So I said, and they said, we're going to put this out as a series of miniseries or something. I said, I like it, but I don't want to keep track. So, and since they relaunched it, it wasn't on my, it wasn't on my, but then what happened was after 2 miniseries, they went back to the original Fear Agent name and numbering. So all of a sudden, like issue 16 of Fear Agent or whatever it was showed up in my pull list. And I was like, what? And then the guy who was working there at the time was like, oh, yeah. He's like, you want? I'm like, he's like, oh, they just put out a sale on all the miniseries issues. Like he's like, "Want me to get those for you?" I'm like, "Sure." What the heck? It's on my pull list again. So it's like he was able to order me all the issues I missed because Diamond put them all on sale, having still had it. So it was like all of a sudden I filled in all the Fear Agent stuff I missed, and I bought it until the end because it was Fear Agent back to its original numbering. Tony Moore, there we go.
Tony, the great Tony Moore. I found that guy doing some Jay and Silent Bob comics in the 90s. Right. So when I think he was on Walking Dead, and I was so happy that I'm like he finally made it because he's phenomenal. Yeah.
Scott, you have Eric Powell's Billy the Kid Old Time Oddities book.
I have not read that, but that's something I would be interested in reading.
I've read some of that. It's good.
Yeah, I have the first mini. I have in the first miniseries. I got Eric Powell to sign them. The greatest line in that is where he looks at the bad guy, and he's like, "Ignorant and stupid. You don't know the difference. They're not the same." Because he tricked the guy. You know, he walks around talking all ignorant. You know what I mean?
I also saw just a few days ago that I think he's going to do another. It's either another little bit. What is it? Big Man Plan series, or they're gonna
little big man. Oh, wait a minute. I know what you're saying. The one about the dwarf. Big
Man Plans, I think, is the name of it.
Yeah, that was through Image. Yeah.
I'm gonna drop out for a moment and come back.
Since we're talking about Fenner, he brought this up earlier. Tim, can you tell him the story about how you and Steve Mannion were hanging out waiting for me when my phone died at Heroes Con?
Oh, I remember we were outside in front of the hotel and we were just sitting around talking and stuff. And I think he remembered us as a pair. You know what I mean? Like he didn't really recognize us until he saw us both together.
Right.
And man, he was just hanging out with us, put us on Facebook. We've seen him a couple of times in Dublin. Yeah. And what was the funny thing that happened? Because this was like 4 years ago or something.
It's like we're getting ready to leave. I think it was on a Sunday, and my phone battery had died. It just completely went, and we couldn't find each other. And you're like sitting outside talking to him while you're waiting for me to walk by to where you can see me.
Yeah, yeah. And then like when he saw you, he looked at both of us and then remembered us from the con. You know what I mean? Like he didn't. I thought he was talking to me because he recognized, where we talked to him in the convention.
He was a really nice guy.
Oh, he's awesome, man. He's just a guy. I mean, this is a guy that's happy to be working in comics. I saw his wife and kids, and he's just one of us.
You can definitely tell that he was happy to do the type of work he was doing.
Yep. And he was just one of us hanging out on the block. It was awesome. Yeah. We had a good time. It ended up being like, I think, an hour and a half of favor.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to point out that I read Tokyo Drifter as Trent Dilfer. Quarterback.
Write that name down. That's a cool name for a detective or something. Trent Drifter. Trent Drifter. I like that name. If you don't use it, I will. That might be my new YouTube handle. Trent Drifter.
The infamous cat.
Yeah, Shiva the Destroyer. And
look at
Shredder
that.
World.
Yeah, my wife, we're determined she was probably 3 weeks old after going to the vet, but my wife is a hospice nurse, rides the roads all day. And on 460, she saw this little kitten with a bloody face and had to stop on the highway to save her. So I said, we don't need the cat. We're getting ready to move. We have a cat. And she likes my lap better than anybody else's. So there you go.
Of course, cats always gravitate to the people who don't like them. Hence, I attract cats like crazy. Don't have any, but I really like I love the cow cats. So that's cool. And I'm so sorry to do this to you guys, but I have I have to go sort of manage my the side effects of medications. I have to go take some medication. It's going to make me loopy, and it doesn't. At any rate, medical problems. So I'm going to cut out. If you don't mind. Sorry to babble.
Be safe. Be safe. Be careful. Be well.
Oh, thank you very much. And yeah, thanks. I'm so glad to be on again. I'm finally functional enough at least to do that. And now I have to leave studio. All right. Night.
Bye. We'll catch you later.
Bye.
Dun, dun, dun.
And you notice how where she's female, nobody wants to do that thing we used to do. Like now that asshole's gone.
None of that.
None of that.
Didn't even think of it.
That's funny.
Have you read some of Strange Death yet?
I've flipped through it, and I'm going to recommend it on art alone. It is a shame that this is one of the last things Dave Sim was able to draw, because the drawing's phenomenal. He draws himself in it, sort of posting it in parts of the Strange Death of Alex Raymond. So I was kind of just flipping through there because I read crossover, and we may have a bone to be picked. I don't know. I'm just telling you.
Oh, that's fine. I think I enjoy crossover, but it's only a D for me.
Terrence. Cracking.
So the femme fatale is in that. Yeah.
Couldn't resist.
So we have a theme going on. So I'm flipping through this book, and it's got this great art, and he's aping Alex Raymond and some other people showing their strips. And I think he's drawn them. I mean, like I said, I haven't gone in depth. Okay, I just opened this up a little bit last night. But strangely enough, instead of like going right through to see what the conspiracy is that he thinks was the true death of Alex Raymond or whatever, I end up stopping because apparently Sam did so much research into Alex Raymond. He figured out how Alex Raymond even used his brush and pen, and goes into detail showing how he knew there was too much ink in his pen. And he gets into some kind of physics about how Alex Raymond was able to get a microscopic thin point on his brush and keep it that way. And he knew exactly how to dip his brush into a 1/4 inch of ink. I got fascinated with these 2 pages of him breaking the code of how Alex Raymond did his art.
It's called dipping your brush into ink. I actually talked about this once a few weeks ago when I was talking about how one of the things that fascinated me about glamour posting this stuff was Dave Sim was doing a lot. He was learning to. He's weirdly obsessed with this one period in comic strips where Alex Raymond was in, from like the late 50s, where there was a lot of photo referenced pen and ink work. Yeah. And he's fascinated by it. And he was learning how to do it. That's why he was copying so many panels from it. But it's always amazing because I come from an art school background. I went to art school. But a lot of cartoonists don't. So when you go to art school, you learn a lot of stuff about how to make art. You learn different techniques. You learn different methods. You have a painting class. You have a drawing class. You have a design class. Nowadays, you have computer classes. But what happens to a lot of these cartoonists is, especially one like Dave Sim, who's kind of off by himself, is you learn the tools it takes to do the job. And if you're not especially curious, which most people aren't, you only know those tools. And I've seen this with other and also when I first got to working at Marvel, I was there with a bunch of other people around my age, and the artists were always willing to show us how they did stuff. So we were always learning how stuff was done. Dave Sim spent 30 years using a pencil and a crow quill. That's it. Nothing else. So it's like I'm reading him, like studying these and talking about how to use a brush, and then I'm like, what do you mean how to use a brush? You dip it in ink and you move your arm. But that's just something he never saw and never learned and was never curious about.
Right.
Like all that stuff he has in there about how to use a brush and him cracking the code is no secret. Anybody with a brush will show you how to do it and is happy to show you. Yeah. So it was just kind of weird, but that's kind of how isolated and single focused he was. It's just
I think it's part of the genius of Alex Raymond that, like, what is that, 20s and the 30s when this guy was learning to draw and coming up and getting Flash Gordon out and everything. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he went to high school. Oh, he draws. Yeah, he draws. He draws beautiful women, but what got me is that I haven't seen somebody be able to draw themselves so honestly since Robert Crumb.
You're gonna have to check out that group.
Did Dave Sim draw the entire thing?
No. Somebody named Carson.
That's what I was curious about.
Carson Grubaugh, I believe, stepped in.
Where did you get yours from?
Pardon?
Where did you get yours from, by the way?
I pre-ordered it through Gmart. What company put it out?
Well, Sleepy Reader's point about them sending out everything to Diamond before the backers, that's like the complete opposite of most Kickstarters.
Yeah, that's
Most
weird.
Kickstarters will send out the stuff straight to the backers first before any other distribution channels get it.
You know, grain of salt on this. I really need to just hurry up and Google it. But the way I remember it, I remember where I was living. So that's the only reason I know sort of the year. But around 2010, 11, somewhere right in there, I sort of heard about this Kickstarter, not understanding what a Kickstarter was.
Right.
But then the next time I heard about it, Dave Sims said it wasn't coming out. My wrist is hurt. We can't figure out what's wrong with it. And I'm sorry I can't send the money out because I'm living off of $350 a month that I'm getting off life insurance or something.
Right.
I don't know, you know. So I was sort of glad that I didn't try to back it. And every now and then, and it was usually bleeding cool to tell you the truth, every now and then you would hear a little something about this. So when I get on there and I'm doing my pre-order, I'm like, holy shit, there it is. There it is. It's really, and I went back and forth. And I'm like, I better get this, and it's at 35% off for pre-ordering.
They actually did a test printing of it for California.
Okay.
And it was such a this is just a couple years ago. It was such a failure that Dave Sim canceled it. But then he gave permission to the artist to he gave permission to the artist to do whatever he wants with it. So that's why it's printed, because the artist got on top of it. But Dave Sim was like, this is such a failure. I'm not going to make any money off this.
Right.
I'm going to lose money on this. So then that guy Carson was like, let me do it. Because he had drawn the back half of it. Dave Sim's like, sure, it's yours.
Like, be my guest.
But I'll tell you right now, you know, with Sim, I'm not the expert, just the guy that's read a lot of Sim. Okay. I mean, so it's my opinion. Okay. And I'm not even saying it's an informed opinion, but I'm predicting when I read this, it's going to be latter days all over again with Cerebus. I think it's going to start out to where it's really fascinating and Sim's doing this great writing. And I feel like it's either going to fall apart or it's going to be incomprehensible by the time I get to the end.
No, I read all the Glamour Puss stuff that Tim did. It's really good. I mean, that awesome. Sims did. It's really good. I can't wait to get it. I think he where's the
I thought that was by far the best point about Glamour Puss was, I mean, the hell with the fashion stuff. Let's do the Alex Raymond story.
The fashion stuff was him practicing. It was just terrible. Like the fashion stuff was him critiquing fashion magazines. And he's got the same critique of fashion magazines that everyone in the world has about fashion magazines. There was nothing insightful there at all. But the Alice Raymond stuff was top notch.
I ended up pre-ordering mine through a shop called Gmart that I talk about all the time, and it's out of Chicago.
Yeah,
somewhere in the early days of dial-up internet, I found this shop, and they were the only one I found at the time that gave me 35% discounts for pre-ordering. So I've been buying off of them since like 2000, 2001, off and on.
I have it on my Amazon wish list. Maybe I'll get it for Christmas. Let's see. Has anyone read the Modern Masters books Tiyomaro's put out? Do artists talk about their process, like drawing inking?
Some of them do, and some of them don't. It just depends on the individual book. They're all worth checking out. The Modern Masters books are fantastic.
I don't think Tomorrow's Publishing has ever put out a bad book, to be honest. I mean, I know he's specifically talking about Modern Masters.
I'll put it to you this way. I'll equate them to the Indiana Jones movies. Even the most mediocre one is pretty good in comparison to everything else.
Mike Erie did a book about the Silver Age Krypton stories or something like that I've been dying to get through Tomorrow's.
There are a couple of books from Tomorrow's that I kind of missed out on, and now you can get them because they run out pretty quickly.
Which ones?
Yeah, man, I know there was one of the. They did 2 books on the Image era, and I have the first one and not the second one, and the second one is better.
They were supposed to do a Modern Masters on Mike Kaluta, but that fell apart. I was
and I think that when Dave Sim was originally involved, it was only going to be on Kickstarter, but when he gave it up, they expanded it. Yeah, back about
That
8 to
makes-
9
that
months
makes
ago.
sense.
Carson
Really?
mentioned that there are printing errors as well at first. Yeah.
Okay.
Watching Powell is entertaining. Shh, say nothing about it.
Oh
At least
man,
he's not
Paolo,
falling asleep.
Yeah.
I'm subbed to Mind the Comics. I'm subbed to Mind the Comics and stuff. And Paolo, you correct me. Maybe I was dreaming it. But in my feed not too long ago, it came up. It was you and Mind the Comics, two other gentlemen.
Yes.
You guys weren't speaking English. And I was
Speaking
like,
No, they weren't.
I'm sitting here like, oh, they're going to do their native tongue. Okay, I see.
I was going to watch that video too, and then I heard they were speaking Portuguese. Like, I can't understand what they're saying.
It was killing me because, and every now and then you guys would say one word or one name that is the same in English or whatever was going on. And I'm like, ugh. I ended up watching you guys for 20 minutes, just imagining this great talk.
Portuguese is just close enough to Spanish that I can pick out a few words here and there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But-
if you read it, it's easier, but the way we speak is different enough that if you're not used to it, you're not going to pick it up.
Well, all I'm going to say is the energy was fantastic. That's why I had me hanging in there. I could feel the energy like that.
Yeah. The translation of the title in English would be the Heralds of the Ninth Art.
You should go back and you should go back and make it auto-generate closed captioning so we can translate it in English.
Translating a 2-hour show. No, it's gotta be done manually. Otherwise, the translation is gonna be.
That's a lot of work too.
Yeah.
OMAC, the one-man army corps.
I thought this was going to be hardback, and then I'm like, well, I got a good price, but I'm fine softback. Yeah. And I was thinking about the yellow covers, like issue 3 or 4 is a big yellow cover with, but everybody really needs to check out OMAC. This guy does nothing but
good.
it's really great.
And can I tell you how much I love the subtitle One Man Army Corps? I mean, it just like explains the whole comic in 4 words.
Yeah.
I mean, you know how hard that is? I just love that. OMAC, one man. It's like I can't even say it without saying One Man Army Corps after. It just sounds so cool. And
I did like a big half-hour video being all teacher-like and dull, explaining the history of OMAC, where I was pulling out Jack Kirby collectors and all this stuff and explaining everything about OMAC. This is one of my first videos I did like in 2010, and I'm sure it's still up, But I went back and tried to watch it, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so monotone and dull, trying to be like serious and stuff. Jack Kirby, this was going to be his Captain America of the future, but Marvel screwed him over, and he did like I was getting. I mean, I just like no.
He was the Ben Stein version of Power Mouse, right?
Yeah.
And I have to say, One Man Army Corps excitedly too. One Man Army Corps.
I think it's issue 3 or 4. I would give everybody issue number 1 so they know what they're reading. The setup, and then I'd throw issue like 3 or 4 where he's fighting this gigantic nuclear crab. It's epic. Even for a minute, Jack Kirby was actually writing epic dialogue and everything. I mean, like
you got me hooked with gigantic nuclear crab.
Yep, breaks my heart every time I get the last issue of Kirby's OMAC. Didn't it just kind of like end suddenly with like him being blown up or something like that? It was like
it got continued in, of all places, Hercules when Walt Simonson came on with Dr. Scuba.
Mighty Hercules.
But OMAC wasn't in there. OMAC ended up getting took over by Jim Starlin a few years later. Oh, wait a minute. I'm shooting from the hip. I can't remember when. But anyway, it ended up being due to the 77 collapse of comics and stuff. They ended up putting Jim Starlin's OMAC stories in the back of Warlord for a while.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And there is no OMAC without Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby's 70s stuff is so distinct.
Yeah.
And then like in 90 or 91, I've got him. I mean, I'm the John Byrne guy, and he was doing some Kirby there, but he did a 4-issue prestige format book of OMAC. And, he worships Kirby. And supposedly, I never saw the article. I never really dug around the internet to find it. But supposedly, it broke his heart because Kirby was like, no, I didn't like it. Kirby was just shaking his head at like,
It's
what
like
did you
when
do?
the first time I ever met Michael Golden, because I was such a big Micronauts fan as a kid. I said, "Did you enjoy drawing this?" He's like, "No."
Is that true,
Whole
Paolo?
conversation right there.
yeah. It's not working yet. Soon.
No freebies.
There are a few Portuguese blogs that do reviews in exchange for getting that book for free.
Yeah, John Buscema also didn't like drawing superheroes.
Yeah, he wanted. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. It was an alter ego, I think, where that came out as a tribute to John Buscema when he died back in the early 2000s.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that's where I read where it came out. Like, he didn't read comics. He did the Wizard of Oz Marvel Treasury Edition by pure memory, no reference. And then it was like he wanted to do comic strips and like Conan and Tarzan. He did not.
I remember reading as a kid that he didn't like drawing superheroes.
That would have crushed me.
Broke my little kid heart. I was like, how can he not like drawing these? Now I get it.
You know, as much as we've mentioned their different titles today, like Alter Ego and the Jack Kirby Collector and whatnot, we should get sponsored by Tomorrow's.
Maybe they can give us freebies.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think who it was. There was some website that did comic news and not even around, and they put out an article that said, "Give us some, tell us what you guys want to hear about. Maybe we can, throw us an idea for an article." I wrote them and said, "You need to check out the YouTube guys." This is like around 2013 and 14, and I explained it all to them, and then they sent me a 2-sentence response back, like, "No, I don't think so. Doesn't sound like our thing."
Yeah, you got to give him a freebie.
Yeah.
Crossover. Is that the trade you got?
I almost want to say you owe me money back, but it's okay. I'm a big boy. I knew I was in trouble when I pulled this thing out of the rack. Like, okay, you want to read it, open mind, no big deal, and it's sticky. This is sticky, and then the comic that he's reading that I'm holding in my hands was sticky. Then I opened it up, and I knew this was going to go downhill. I don't know, it's not going to show up. But you see the black right here on this? It's all over this, like it's running ink. And I'm like, is this an aesthetic? Is he trying to make it feel like an old comic book where that happened?
Nope.
And I went through it, and I'm like, oh my God. And I knew we were in trouble when he tries to win over the fans. I mean, I can't know if you see it, but even the black has come off on the inside. So I'm sitting here thinking, big deal. Maybe he's making it try to feel like an old comic or something that's aged. But then then Donnie Coates, what's his name? Donnie Cates does this intro where he tries to win your heart so you don't be harsh to him. I think he knows it's not the best. But he's like, I about died 10 years ago and I was in the hospital and it affected my work. And then a couple of years ago, I almost died again, but I won't get into that. And when I came out that time, I'm like, I need to start loving things, talk about the things I love. And I loved Image in the 90s. When I was 11, I was all into Spawn and all this stuff. So that whole concept of this book being about every superhero character, comic book character in the world comes into the real world in a giant battle in Colorado, it's all talk and no show. I'm like, what are the stakes here, man? What are the stakes?
I've said, I wouldn't actually recommend crossover to anyone. It's just okay. And I usually don't like to recommend okay. I mean, I like it. It's okay. I don't like to recommend okay stuff because that means if it's just okay, that means a lot of people aren't going to like it.
You're talking to the guy that recommends Atari Force to people. Okay, so you don't have to defend yourself. It's all right. You're talking to the guy. I recommend Atari Force to people. I'm like,
well, Atari Force is good.
Just the first 12 issues. I love Atari Force. Yeah. I have no shame about Atari Force, but again,
I have recommended Atari Force many a time.
Jose loses. I got Lopez to sign my Atari Force #1 of all books for me to pick out for him to sign. That and Dead Man and stuff.
I remember being shocked that I liked Atari Force when I was buying it off the stands.
It's better than it should be. That was my thoughts. My thoughts were this is better than it should be.
First of all, in those days, licensed comics were all terrible. The only reason I bought it was because of Jose Garcia Lopez art. And it was good because of Jose Garcia Lopez art.
Right.
I think that's his only regular series he's ever done.
Yeah, he hasn't done it. He did a lot of Superman.
A lot of one-shots here and there, but not an actual run in a book.
Yeah, Sal Buscema loved comics and superheroes. Jared got me Usagi, so he wins forever in recommendation contests. I recommend Usagi all the time. That's one I recommend wholeheartedly.
Let me tell you something. Scott didn't just recommend Usagi. He actually ended up behind one of those thick phone books that said, "You're going to read this." And he was right. He was right. When I got to Lone Wolf and Cub, well, no, not Lone Wolf and Cub, Lone Goat and Kid. That's that's when I fell in love with it. Yeah.
And it's funny because the other YouTube channels, the other comics realisms, everybody likes Usagi. I've never heard anybody say anything bad about it.
There are more people talking about Usagi today than there were when I started on YouTube.
That's true. Sure. Yeah.
That's
true.
Now, a few of them I got to talk about Usagi just because I showed it, like Sleepy, but a bunch of them I did. It's kind of
easy when you discover this great band that you think everybody should know about.
Right.
And you tell them, and it slowly gets out over time that this is something that's good. Yeah.
And it's funny, like to watch Sleepy Reader when he ranks his comics every week, and I feel this way about Usagi too. Sometimes he ranks Usagi like number 3 or 4. And he's like, just because I can't rank it number 1 every week. It's so consistently good that it sometimes you like it. There's only A and A+ Usagi Yojimbo issues.
Right.
So, and sometimes I take it for granted. Matter of fact, in the 90s is when I really took it for granted. In the 90s, sometimes because I was a lot busier then. So I'd pick up my comics every week. And I wouldn't always read all of them that week. And sometimes I'd let Usagi Yojimbo pile up for 6 issues.
Right.
And then I'd sit down and read those 6 issues and be blown away. And be like, why did I let...
It's like binge watching TV, but you're binge reading Usagi, yeah.
Right. And it'd be like... sometimes I'd see Usagi and I'd take it for granted. I'm like, I'll read that later. Just because it's always going to be there, it's always going to be good. I'll read something else right now.
And just Terrence is probably going to enjoy this. I mean, he's reading the earlier stuff. I guess it's starting from he got the first trade. It gets even better as it goes along.
Yeah.
So
I haven't heard too many YouTubers dismiss it as a kid's book, but I haven't.
Have any of these YouTubers
discovered too many
comic that was published after the 1950s?
I think most YouTubers will ignore Usagi because it's not a Marvel and DC comic.
That's exactly why they should read it.
So they can't put it down as a collectible that they need to accumulate.
That's exactly why they need to read it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Scott, were you at Heroes Con with me when somebody was talking about how Neil Adams has talked to them about Stan Sakai?
No, I don't remember.
Neil Adams shows Stan Sakai like ultimate respect. You know what I mean? And one of the fans or somebody was talking to Neil Adams sort of asked, what was that about? But I mean, I'm sure it was in a tactful way. And pretty much Neil Adams said that the biggest secret in comics is Stan Sakai is right where every comic book creator wish they could be, owns his character. And there's been a fight going on since the 90s that nobody knows about for the merchandise rights or the IP rights to make cartoons and stuff. So he's got like the ultimate respect for Stan Sakai.
Well, I remember years ago, Stan said that having your work licensed but not actually being translated into another medium yet is a good place to be because you get the money, but nobody else has messed up your work yet.
But when I met Stan Sakai after Scott gave me the book and I read it and it was so accurate with Feudal Japan, and then I got him on Facebook and he's doing these authentic Japanese recipes and cooks and he's showing you all this stuff. And every now and then he would show like a sketch of Usagi he did for a commission or something. Right. And then he talked about going to Japan to do research and getting to write it off on his taxes for works and talks about his wife, and his wife died, then he remarried. Okay, so I'm sitting here thinking the guy in my mind has come over here from Japan as a kid. I meet him at Baltimore Con, and I'm real excited. I'm like, oh, I finally got here. I'm just Stan Sakai. And he opens his mouth, and I'm expecting a Japanese accent. And he's like got this big, thick American, like, hey, y'all, what's up? And I'm like, oh, I wasn't crushed. I was just sort of ashamed of myself for assuming that. But, just all the, I was like, oh, wow.
I think he lived in Hawaii for a while, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I don't know if he's
y'all, but I'm doing that for.
I don't know if he's
from
Hawaii.
What you expected to come out of that body, right?
Y'all come back now. You hear?
Welcome to our weekly Usagi Yojimbo fan club meeting again.
Yes. If we get desperate for a topic, I can bring up this J.M. DeMante's Dr. Fate series. That's kind of weird. It's what if I just say it? It's when I tell you the concept behind it, it's like I'm like, what was he thinking?
That good, huh?
I'm curious to see where he's going with it, but
it's interesting that you bring that up. Can you think this is the same guy that wrote Moonshadow?
That's exactly where I was going to go with this. After reading Moonshadow, this was a bit jarring. Yeah. When I got home from work about 20 minutes before I jumped on here, and I was actually wondering if I could worm Dr. Fate into the show. And I was like, Moonshadow?
I don't know if I could make an argument for Usagi being as important as the Turtles book, sort of in pop culture, but I like Usagi better. So, but I don't know about important.
I guess Usagi did show up in the Turtles cartoon in the night.
Yeah,
in the early
got
90s.
A toy. I have it somewhere. Got 2 toys.
Well, also how you define important.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Is it impact or is it?
That's why I said in
work or both.
If we're talking in general in pop culture, the Turtles is way more important than Usagi, just because so many more people know it.
Yeah, it goes Cerebus and then Turtles, in my opinion.
Well, to comics, yes, maybe.
Yeah.
But like Cerebus isn't the least bit important.
Well, then also, is it like, are you talking just generic audience in general, or just people doing it in comics?
I think the accomplishments how Cerebus was one of the first self-published books to make it.
Oh yeah,
and it inspired other people, including people.
I understand 100%.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah,
right. But that's in the context of comics. It's really important. But in the context of overall pop culture, maybe not. So no one knows about Cerebus. Nobody cares.
In terms of self-published stuff, which came first? Was it Cerebus or was it ElfQuest?
I don't know. I have no idea.
I don't know.
They both came around the same time.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Turtles started a whole thing in the 80s for black and white.
Well, the Turtles was do-it-yourself until that marketer got his hands on it. And Sarah, like I said, to us comic book fans, there's different importance to things than to the guy on the street who hasn't read a comic book.
Right.
You know what? The guy on the street is missing out. I've always said that.
He is.
People I've never let the stigma of comics bother me, nor did I try to really push them on the muggles. I always just really had this attitude like they're just missing out,
If you limit it to just...
Yeah, that's what I was saying, Sleepy. I agree with that's what I was trying to get.
That might be true, but that's only important to us.
Yeah. Well, I think Eastman and Laird have said it was Frank Miller, Jack Kirby, and I know they've said Cerebus somewhere, and that's why they were so excited to get Cerebus in the book for a turtle story.
Like I said, I have no doubt of that. The Turtles might not exist without Cerebus. Like I said, I don't think that matters in the overall scheme of pop culture things. Right. Really, things that kind of have the antecedents of things that have a big pop culture effect don't really matter to that pop culture. It only matters to us who love those antecedent things.
I was just going to mention, if you're limited to just a comics-related audience only, I think you kind of have to throw Love and Rockets in there too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's another real important one. Yeah.
Just to piggyback back, the Turtles' popularity They started in a comic and people know it, man, but it's the cartoon and the toys that made them popular.
That was all.
That's a
that
whole other
marketing guy.
Yeah, that's
that
a
was
whole
all that
other
marketing
thing.
guy whose name I don't know, who was like, I can do something with this. I can
Yeah.
sell that. And Eastman and Laird were like, all right.
I think one of the
And then-
first places I ever saw Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when Anthrax had their graphics on their guitars.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
I've watched that that's the only episode I watched of the Toys That Made Us, because I wanted to see the Turtles guys.
I actually need to watch those episodes.
And it was like they hadn't talked in years before that show that brought them together.
Maybe I
Just
didn't watch
check.
that. I know I've watched 2 or 3 documentaries on the Turtles over the last 3 years. So okay, Cerebus was in 77, Elquest was 78. Yeah.
Wow.
Wasn't wasn't the First Kingdom before them? Mhm.
Oh yeah, the First Kingdom was way before them, but I don't think the First
Crow.
Kingdom has as much impact in indie audiences
Yeah, Cerebus, yeah.
as Cerebus does.
Yeah, that the
I mean,
Crow.
historically, it's important because it was one of the first things, like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just beyond time and again is supposed to be important, but the majority of people have never read it or have even heard about it. So yeah, everybody's going to repeat the idea that Will Eisner invented the graphic novel.
Right.
The thing about the Turtles,
Gil Kane's Black Mark was the first graphic novel too.
Yeah.
No, there was that one that they reprinted. What's the name of it? From the 40s. That was Matt Baker and who was the writer?
Yeah, it rhymes with lust. Stan
It
Drake.
rhymes with lust. Yeah.
Not Stan Drake, Arnold Drake.
Arnold Drake and Matt Baker. Dark Horse put out a facsimile of it that I have that they must have put 15 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't register that Arnold Drake that did that is the same guy that created Guardians of the Galaxy and the Doom Patrol. I never put that together. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, never mind. I'm having a moment. Go on. But
one thing that the Turtles did. Yeah, one thing that the Turtles did is that all of a sudden there were a bunch of Saturday morning cartoons based on indie comics in the 90s.
Okay, I never thought about that. Yeah,
Cadillac Dinosaurs.
Yeah,
Fish Police.
Oh yeah, they're all on Tubi. You can still look these up on Tubi. Sam and Max.
I forgot there was an animated version of Fish Police.
Yeah. If you get Tubi on your Fire Stick or RooTube or Roku or whatever, get Tubi. These are all on there, man. I've been watching Sam and Max cartoons, and they're freaking awesome.
That's the way I watched some of those Big Guy and Rusty the Robot cartoons.
I was freaking out when a Big Guy and Rusty the Robot cartoon came out, and it was the same people who animated the Tick and all that stuff. And I thought it was a little lackluster, but it was still cool to see all. I see a Jeff Darrow design up there.
Can you imagine working in the animation department and you get these style sheets and they're like Jeff Darrow's artwork, and like, you want me to draw how many of these? Really? You're going to give me a raise right now.
When were the first European graphic albums, and weren't they collections of strips?
Yes.
I want to say those were the 60s, weren't they?
No, they were putting out, I think it was 31 for the Tintin in the Land of the Soviets.
Oh, never mind. I'm in a completely different area in my head. I was thinking the Superman stuff they reprinted in the 60s that I used to hear Ghost Critic and them talk about.
Oh, yeah. So I don't know if they would count as graphic novels or collections of comic strips.
Yeah, I never heard about those until YouTube when we had like Mark and Ghost Critic, and there's like four English guys we used to have that were in the community and stuff.
But
yeah,
you can also argue yourself to your blue in the face. What's the first graphic novel?
But it
the thing about what's
actually one thing that came out.
The thing about what the Belgians and the French did to be considered graphic novels is that they were not collections of strips per se. The comic was serialized. It was designed as one story, and they would put out pages. They were not chapters. It was just the pages that were done that week.
Right. As long as indie books, well, I still need to read that one too. I think they put it all out in one volume a few years ago, but I never got it myself.
You cannot find that one volume, the Wit's End, the complete Wit's End from Fantagraphics. You're going to have to grow new arms and legs to afford that now.
And look, you can think of Tintin as a graphic novel, as a complete story in one volume, but it was really a complete story in the newspaper first.
Yeah.
So, like, Rhymes with Lust was made as one book. It was never printed anywhere first. Right. And it was distributed as one book. So to be for adults, even not for kids. Like Tintin was.
But you know the first printing of Tintin in the Land of the Soviets, it's more expensive and more collectible than a set of the newspapers where the first Tintin story appeared.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It all depends on how you define graphic novel. If you define, like some people define graphic novel as an original work, all told in one novel, like any novel would be.
Yeah. One thing about Spirou, there is no graphic novel made by Spirou's creator. The only thing there is Volume 0, which is a collection of the short stories that he worked on before he passed it on to the other people working for the magazine.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but then there's also the Charles Dickens argument.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
in that
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Are Charles Dickens novels not novels because they were published in magazines first? Same with
Sherlock Holmes, Edgar Allan Poe.
They're short stories mostly, but like Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. Is that not a graphic novel? Because it was published in 4 issues originally, but they knew it was going to be 4 issues. They planned for it to be 4 issues. They knew it was going to be collected at the end of those 4. So is that a graphic novel, or is that there's these weird definitions we have that are
you can
defined by how something was distributed in.
You know what? After we figure this out, I want to know what the first Tijuana Bible was. All right, let's get in there.
What are they?
Well, it's from the Old Testament.
A lot of graphic novels were serialized in his kitchen sink spirit mag. Look at that.
I still have not read Contract from God, but I've seen enough of the artwork that I'm wondering if I've read it a page at a time over 10 years.
Contract from God.
It's worth reading. I still want to know how many people have actually read all of the First Kingdom.
I haven't.
I haven't.
I've never read it.
No.
I don't know anyone who's read all of the First Kingdom, and I know a lot of comic readers.
But now that it's been mentioned, they're going to come out of the woodwork. I guarantee it.
Sure.
One thing
I know plenty of people who've started it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely started it, and then I go back and I have to restart it. One thing that just popped into my head. The majority of French graphic novels are not set up as a series. And usually when you start a modern French series, you have to start at volume 1. Like manga, or when you read Sandman, because people are usually complain. I want to how to get people from outside to reading superhero comics, which is exactly the problem. They should not start by reading superhero comics. The argument is, where did they start? Because obviously you're not going to give them stuff from the 40s or the 60s.
Right.
So you have to give them something, a complete story. But with the more personal series, they have to start at volume 1. Sandman has to start at volume 1. And in a manga, it's the same thing. But not so with French comics, especially because I don't think there's anybody since the 1960s who's ever read Asterix in publication order.
Right.
Because you can pick up any volume of Asterix and read it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I got you now. Okay, yeah. I'm glad I kept my mouth shut.
The fiction would appeal to an American audience. It's a very common vibe between the U.S. and France in that period. Okay, I don't know that one at all.
But if you
See,
tell
this is-
Americans now that they're similar to France, you're going to get a lot of pushback.
this was the really cool thing about the early days of the YouTube comic community, and I don't care if I sound like some old man, but like I recognize like some of the names and stuff because people used to jump up and say what they read about and things like that, and they would mention these books.
Right.
So I hear things like, you know, that title right there, and I have to like pause for a minute, like, how do I know that? And I realize it's because somebody, you know, was trying to introduce what they read when we had like more people who read their comics and would like recommend things, you know.
I suppose that Franken's Spirou could be appealing to an older audience who liked adventure series for the sake of being adventure series. Especially because for the people that nowadays think fondly of Karl Barks's Ducks, that contemporary Spirou would definitely appeal to them.
I tell you, Spirou, the first time I heard that on a YouTube video, and I wish Bromstar was here so I could make sure I was being accurate, but it was a guy from Germany, and he was cool, right? And he would come on there and he'd do his videos and talk, and he was a character, man, let me tell you, right? And then finally he did this one video where I don't know what he was thinking, but he came in drunk, had the camera set up, talked about comic books for a few minutes, and passed out. And the rest of the video was 30 minutes long of him just passed out on the table.
That's how we did things in the 70s. I jumped into the Legion of Superhero and just started reading the Grell material.
Yeah.
Because you had no other choice.
There
was
variety,
no first
too.
issues,
More
there
variety.
were no jumping on points. We just started, and that was part of the thrill of reading comics. Was all of a sudden you jumped on into the middle of this world, and you're like,
because
and I just wanted more of it. I just wanted to learn more about it.
And that was the thing that they did well that they don't do anymore, because every story had to count.
Right.
And nowadays they don't.
What are the things
sports analogy now? So use a sports analogy now. They're just playing for the playoffs. Where in the old days, every game counted.
I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but I think one of the problems now is all the stories do have to count. And what I mean by that is I've heard that's why event comics are so big now. And I've heard fans say that they don't like the everyday issue. They don't like, Spider-Man one random issue, 146. They say, I want my comics to matter.
Yeah, but they don't.
Story, every story arc.
Right, but that doesn't work because the publication format does. First, it's the publication format.
I know that doesn't work. I'm just saying that's how comics are.
Yeah,
now,
that's how
what the fans want.
Yeah, and that's how they perceive it. But it doesn't actually. It's not actually fulfilling that way.
No, I don't. But event comics are still the best-selling comics out there. So I think it is fulfilling to a certain number of people who buy those comics.
Yeah, I saw a comment that week that Penguin messed up the Marvel's orders. And some guy said that some retailers said that the market is 85% collector, 15% reader, and it's the collectors who think that who make it seem that the event matters.
That's where I was kind of wanting to go with something like where you talked about people you jump in the 70s. Well, they had recaps at the beginning of the book. Stan Lee said things like every comic book can be somebody's first comic. So they're a little bit more accessible. But I was getting ready to, what Powell said about 15% readers, I can believe that, because you would have an event in like an X-Men book, and then all of a sudden Chris Claremont would write a one-issue story as a breather and a little bit lighten the mood, and then go on to the next, kind of big story. People who read the comic books, man, that actually read the comic books, you got to have some of those quiet moments and stuff to kind of like invest yourself in the character, get to know them a little bit, so that when the stakes get raised up, you're invested. You end up caring about the character because you get to know them. They just take like a person or something funny happens, or something lighter, they do something, Like Starman. Starman is my guy because like he went to flea markets trying to find collectibles. You know what I mean? Little things like that. Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, Penguin did better this week. They double boxed all their Marvels. I don't know if you know that. Last week there was nothing but complaints. Like my comic shop owner said,
Yeah.
all the 1 in 25s of I think Spider-Man were wrecked, and Penguin couldn't replace them. And it was like, when you get a 1 in 25, that means you got to buy 25 copies of Spider-Man. And LCSN was like, these are useless to me. I don't need I can't sell those other 25 copies. I needed the 1 in 25. So it was like this week that Penguin got it right. So it only took him a week to get stuff right. Now, I like the occasional throwaway story in 1997's Action Comics. We didn't need events, but exactly. But you know what it is? That there were plenty of people in the 70s who liked events too, but they weren't. It's like, but since they started catering to events, everybody else fell off, kind of.
An event back then was when 2 books crossed over. When
Yeah.
Avengers versus Defenders happened. In 1982, I still listened to my stepdad and some of his friends who read comics still talking about when the Avengers met the Defenders. Like that's probably like a decade later. I don't know.
Sure.
But keep in mind, as much as we complain about crossovers and how awful they are, they're the best-selling books.
Oh, I rarely complain. It's just part of the market. I hate when a company is in the middle of an event and they're already advertising for the next one. That already tells you this means nothing.
Let's do one more rip, read, and tear. Let's see what we got. Ooh, we're going to go with
2020.
We're gonna go with Indies from October 1986.
Help me out here.
Okay.
Let's see here.
I want to be eaten alive.
There we go. We've got a cheesecake cover, a beefcake cover, and a bondage cover.
Oh, I've already got this.
Oh, what do you got? What do you got?
Oh, we're going to be slabbing the Dave Stevens Jade Johnny Quest cover because that's a freaking classic. And then we're going to rip up old Sable there. And then I'm going to read Airboy because it's Chuck Dixon and a 1940s character that they hypersexualize a little, hyperviolence.
I'm going to slab Airboy and read Johnny Quest and rip Sable.
Poor Sable.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. I love Sable. I love reading Sable. But that if you put all these 3 covers next to each other, that looks like the least interesting book.
And nobody likes Beefcake Sable. Wow.
Yeah, but it's not doing anything. You notice it's not Beefcake Sable. Is Sunday afternoon lazing about at home Sable.
You know what?
I had that Johnny Quest, by the way.
I'm going to throw a monkey wrench in here. Okay.
Uh-oh.
Yes, I'm going to slab Johnny Quest because I've already read it. And that's one of Dave Stevens' best covers ever. I'm going to read Sable, and the only reason I'm going to rip up Airboy is because not all Airboy is good. Some of it is, some of it's not.
Fair enough. Yes.
That John, you know what it is? That John Sable cover just isn't very good. What is that? What is with that bikini-clad woman who looks like?
It looks like he's trying to be Roger. Oh no! Oh my God! I just went blank. Den, the guy that does Den, the legend.
Richard Corbin.
Yeah, it looks like he's trying to do Richard Corbin.
Looks like
It's a poor man's Richard Corbin.
For me.
It's that
I'm also
logo
looking at
on
this on a
Sable.
cell phone.
Yeah, that logo on Sable just screams out that it was done on a computer.
You know what?
No
I think I'm
soul.
ripping up Sable too. I'm going to slab Airboy because I think I can sell that as a bondage cover.
Yeah.
And I'm going to read Johnny Quest.
The people who would buy that Airboy because it's a bondage cover and would skip out on that wonderful Dave Stevens female figure. Sad times, man. Sad times.
Finally, somebody is not ripping Sable. Sleepy is going to read Sable, rip Airboy, and slab Quest.
Yeah, Damien and I agree with each other there. So.
Please don't bite me.
I do kind of like that John Sable cover and its sheer cheesiness.
You see this?
It does really scream 1980s, doesn't it?
I mean, it is far from Mike Grell's best work.
Yeah.
Right.
The design, I mean,
It's not a Warlord cover, I'll tell you that. It's not one of his artistic
Now that I look at
covers.
it, that might be Mike Grell's worst cover.
Maybe.
I mean, John Sable himself is there's something in art called contrapposto, where and it's a Renaissance term. So artists have known this since the Renaissance. In order to get a figure to look more active, you put the shoulders at one angle and the hips at another. You don't have the shoulder and hips parallel.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of, and if you look at all old art, that's how it is, and that's kind of how she is right here, Jade. She's got her hips at one angle and her shoulders at an almost defying perspective. Or if you look at him, his shoulders and his hips are at the same angle, and that like always makes for a more boring cover.
I'm also sitting here wondering, is he trying to say something? Like if we were in 1986, would this look like a magazine cover? But that head is too big. The hips and the waist, now that you pointed it out, I can't unsee it now. I mean, that's just I have the Warlord covers of Warlord standing there like artistically done and crosshatched.
I must say, I didn't realize I just saw this cover and went, beefcake. I got to put that one in there. I didn't realize how absolutely, and this woman up here, she's just sitting on this. She's supposed to be in the background, but she's just like almost sitting on top of him.
She's farting in his ear.
That's what she's doing. And this, and like, and the graphic design, like I get that this is supposed to be a piece of film behind him. That makes sense. But what is this stripe on the side?
Maybe they're trying to be a Duran Duran cover. Maybe they're trying to be girls on film. You know, I don't know.
It's just weird. Yeah, it's a bad Sable cover. That's all.
Yeah,
sometimes people should see a doctor.
That reminds me of a storyboard for a video you would have seen on MTV back in the day.
Yeah, I can hear take on me now. I was hearing Duran Duran when I looked at that Sable cover, but now I hear a little aha, you know.
Airboy bondage cover is pretty cool though. You rarely see, you know, a guy with a shirt ripped up in bondage. But I think that was Flint Henry who drew that. I think it may have said. I can't remember.
That sounds like a pin name, if you will. You know?
Yeah, Flint Henry. No one can really be named Flint.
Yeah, it needs to be Trent. What was that name we came up with? Trent
Dilfer.
Yeah. That's as he became a better writer, Grell became a duller artist, in my opinion. That's interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
I went to Dave Stevens' website, now wanting to own all the comics he's done.
Fenner, where have you been for the last 30 years, man? Yeah. Dave Stevens is one of the best artists that's ever worked in comics.
And there are certain things like he did maybe a handful, maybe 3 Johnny Quest covers. I can't remember. It was not a lot. But it's like those are the issues you can never find. Like in a Johnny Quest, if you find Johnny Quest in a back issue bin, the Dave Stevens covers are always missing.
I don't remember if he did another Johnny Quest besides that one.
I really don't think he did, but I was about to look it up because I have him. I think I'm only missing like 4 or 5 issues of the series now. Right. But my CLZ app is on the phone, and that's what I'm looking at these pictures on this tiny phone, you know.
And he did one, I think it was only one cover of Crossfire, and it's got Marilyn Monroe on it. Yeah. And you can never find that issue of Crossfire because that's the one that goes. I own Rocketeer, my favorite. He did issue 3 covers out of Johnny Quest. Yeah, I remember him doing a few because I looked through them recently. I was like, "Oh, Dave Stevens cover." Oh, I
have the Jezebel Jade miniseries, which is actually hard to find. It's not
worth anything. True,
I imagine,
but it's hard to find. You know,
that's because those series were all bought by guys like me, and they've been in my collection for 40, 30 years, and there's no reason to sell them because they're not worth anything.
And the people that are looking for them are Johnny Quest fans.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bit of a Johnny Quest collection in this house.
Tim and I actually met each other at a little local convention because we were both looking at a Johnny Quest statue.
Yep. Yeah.
There you go.
This is true.
You can find. I guess you can find that Crossfire issue for $5 in Winnipeg. But I just know that from people who over the years watching people's back issue hauls when they find that Marilyn Monroe, Dave Stevens Crossfire cover, they're like, "Oh, this was finally there," so I picked it up.
Right.
Crossfire. But yeah, there's a lot of comics that are worth nothing, but you can't find because they're in people's collections.
The people who want them are the people that have them, and that's
Right.
that's
There's
exactly
a friend of mine in Florida right now that he is looking for a very obscure series that was done by Ricardo Delgado, who did Age of Reptiles. It's called Hieroglyph. It's kind of like an alien kind of a story. As an astronaut goes to another planet, goes through these different, ruins and whatnot. They're not really, something you're either going to find in a dollar bin somewhere, or you're going to spend big bucks because nobody else has it anywhere.
Right. That's like I am always looking on eBay for Palookaville issues 1 and 2. I think those are the two I'm missing. And when they pop up, they go for astronomical money, and no one ever buys them.
Yeah.
Because no one wants Palookaville 1 or 2, except for a few guys like me who are Palookaville fans. Never got those issues, but you know what? If we don't get them, it's no big deal.
And it's the
There's
same
nothing
thing
really
with those
better.
ridiculous prices on the Amazon market, where people try, they find out, hey, there's nobody has this, and they jack the price up like $1,000 because nobody has it.
And even random issues of Palookaville are on eBay for like $20 a piece. But if you go to items sold, nobody ever buys them because no one who's a Palookaville fan is interested in paying $20 an issue for it. They're just not.
Man, I got something like 11 issues of DP7 for $1.37. On eBay. I'm like, just
those are Marvel books, so you can find them.
Yeah.
Were those the new Universe series?
Yeah, my whole point is that like there's a niche group that get that. There are people who collect Dead Universes, Marvel books in general, a little bit. So for those to be selling at $1.37 for 11 issues, and Palookaville is going for what he's saying it is, that shows a problem. I mean,
I was sitting on. I actually managed to be on one of Englantine's Saturday night auctions. He started earlier than usual instead of at Englantine Standard Time, and I sat in one for about 3 hours, and he pulled out a collection of Mark Hazard Merc to sell.
I know the antique shop in the booth that I can get that entire series again. It has Gray Morrow covers, and I think Gray Morrow did some of the interiors because I bought them off the rack when they came out. That's the only, and Peter David wrote those, but the only thing in there to get is Gray Morrow. That's its only redemption,
I read an article maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, which is, of course, the time frame I think everything is, that was talking about how people of a certain age were selling their collections, and they all had the same indie stuff from the 80s. It's like this guy was like, every collection I see has Nexus, The Badger, John Sable, and it's like, and they're all comics that nobody wants.
But they don't have Boris the Bear, though, do they?
What was that?
But
they don't have Boris the Bear.
No,
Boris the Bear, yeah.
But I see the opportunity here for different market in a couple of decades. There's this guy who Mike Smith. What's his YouTube name? From Florida, collects Golden Age comics, but he only collects the cheap ones for $5.
Okay.
So he's got
I know him.
Yeah, man. I forgot his name.
He's got to look up his name now.
Yeah,
Comic Crack put in a pretty big order to a Nanadova place online called Comic World. Palookaville, Peep Show, Mr. X, and a boatload of 80s. And the price he came back with was outrageous. Yeah, like those Palookavilles, no one buys them, but they try to sell. And Peep Show, I meant, that's another one that I have all of the Peep Show. Mm-hmm. And if you bought Peep Show in the 90s, you still have it in your collection, and it's nowhere to be found.
Mr. X is
probably
another
a little
good
easier to
example
find
of
some of the
the
issues.
prices on back issues being all over the place.
Mhm.
Sometimes you can find them in a dollar bin, and other times you're going to spend big bucks on them because
I
they're just,
don't know
that's
what's
because-
going on, but you said Plookaville so many times. It's making, I don't know what the connection is, if there's any, but now I want to see if they have any old alley oop books, if that's, you know, I want some caveman, you know. So,
well, the reason he spelled it OOP is it stands for out of print.
Mm. Yeah, the Golden Age collector is called Night Tiger Comics. This channel, he buys a lot. He buys stuff from those publishers that nobody cares about.
Right.
Avon, Magazine Enterprises, Charlton without it being the superheroes.
Right. Notice if you run across any of this stuff in back issue bins, it's probably dirt cheap.
yeah.
If
I'm
you're
getting the
specifically looking for it, it's not.
Yeah, when Paolo said Charlton, I'm really like, I really need to get a run of surfing wheels. You know,
I am kind of interested in the auto racing comics because they were done by Jack Keller, and Keller was very, very good at drawing realistic cars.
Well, surfing wheels, you might want to check it out because half the book was a surfing story, and then the other half of the book was 3 motorcycle guys called, I think they were the Blue Angels, and they had one guy who had turned from the Hells Angels into a good guy. I mean, and he runs around with a chain. You know, I'm telling you, man, they have matching jackets. They're white. You know,
well, I don't know about you guys, but now I could use a few issues of Murderous Gangsters.
There we go. Yeah. Yeah. Support the mob, sir. Support the mob. That's right.
Well, everybody was mob connected, so at the time. So
well, I'm trying to think where I heard it, man. But the mob would buy up comic books in the 70s, and that's why Marvel and I think DC didn't know how many books they actually sold. The mob was still them at a distributor level.
It wasn't the mob. That was Robert Birnbaum writes about it in the early 70s. That was the affidavit return system.
Yeah.
Where instead of ripping the cover off and mailing it back to show you returned it, you just had to sign an affidavit. So the guys at the distributors were just selling the comics out the back door. Guys like Robert Birnbaum would go to the distributor and say, I want 100, give me 5 cases of Conan #3. And they'd sell them to him right out and then write down that there were returns.
Oh, wow.
That's why. And this is the thing too. I read Robert Birnbaum wrote this too.
Have we talked about this before?
Network.
I think we've talked about this. We have
talked about this before.
Yeah.
The Old Boy Network, where the president of DC used to go around and check on everything, but then he retired and Carmen Infantino took over and didn't know anything about it. So
in the 80s, with people talking and assuming stuff, it was the other way around. It was when you would find those comics with the title ripped off. The story would come out like, well, it's because the mob was doing it, so we rip them now when we take them back, so the mob don't get them. That's what the people in the little mom and pop drugstores would say. Yeah,
but they used to rip off first. Originally, they had to rip off the cover, then they had to rip off just the logo, and then they were supposed to destroy them afterwards. But a lot of stores just sold them anyway, for coverless coverless for a penny, or logoless for a nickel or something. That was the business.
Yeah. I have some 60s Captain America and some Jack Kirby Fantastic Four. It breaks my heart every time I bring them out because they've had the cover ripped off, but I got them because they were Kirby, Do
you remember looking in like the Mile High catalog or else like the Overstreet Guide, especially back in the late 70s, early 80s? They always had Conan #3. And next to it said low distribution, and the price was always higher.
Oh yeah,
and the reason it was low distribution was because everybody bought them out. That there was a bunch of guys who tried to get all the Conan #3s they could, so it wasn't even distributed across the whole West Coast. They were just people who bought it out of the back of the warehouse.
Right.
Okay.
So there's actually plenty of issues. It's like Robert Birnbaum, he tells a story. They used to go to the distributor for like the new issue of Barry Windsor Smith's Conan. Mm-hmm. They'd buy 300 or 400 copies from the distributor, go to a con that weekend, and sell them for $0.25 a piece when comics were, 15 cents or whatever they were. So they'd make their money back just like that.
Artificial scarcity.
Yeah.
See,
Beer diamonds.
when I hear Barry Windsor Smith, Conan, my mind now, I mean, I've been in the game too long. I'm like now at the point where I'm like, that's the real start of the Bronze Age, sir. But
Yeah, here in Missouri, right. There's parts of the country where title ripped off comics were everywhere. Is Batman still rare, like it said in the price guide? I don't know. I haven't seen that in a while.
I haven't ate dinner tonight, so would you like, before I hop off here, would you like me to tell you the setting for this Dr. Fate book?
Sure. We're about to wind down anyway, so.
Oh, okay. But
finish us out here with Dr. Fate in a setting.
This is like from, I don't know, 88, and they're trying to keep the tone as Giffen and DeMante's Justice League, I can tell, right? But when I read this in the Who's Who update, what they did with Dr. Fate, it didn't sound that weird until I read it. Okay. So they're keeping a very light tone. I brag about Sean McManus' art, but I can't in this. I'm like, he's let me down. I'm embarrassed myself bragging about him. But basically what has happened is Naboo of Dr. Fate used to live in the helmet and the amulet. And Kent Nelson was Dr. Fate. Kent Nelson has died. Naboo jumped out of the helmet into his body, and he's walking around looking like John Constantine now, watching TV and eating food and being human with a weird sense of humor, considering he's supposed to be an Egyptian 3,000-year-old sorcerer. He then reveals that Dr. Fate was supposed to be controlled by two people that would merge, like a la Firestorm, to be Dr. Fate. It was never supposed to be one person. So the Lords of Chaos got a hold of a 10-year-old little kid and the stepmom. I think the dad was killed. And he turns around and they torture the little kid where he's traumatized. The dad dies, I think. There's a mini series before this. They didn't do a good recap. But anyway, here's the weird part. The stepmom is now in love with the 10-year-old kid who's been aged into an adult. And they merge together to be Dr. Fate, so they're in each other's heads. And and every now and then she'll like make a pass at him and he runs off like a 10-year-old kid.
Was this Dr. Fate or Dr. Oedipus?
Yeah. So the kid gets traumatized because a Lord of Chaos pops up. Like there's nobody else in the world. They have a little goblin that for no reason at all, they just invaded a house, and the Naboo sent them out as a test, see if they can handle little gremlins or goblins or something. And one survives and decides that he's going to hang out with them. And he reminds me of I don't know, one of those 80s cartoon sidekicks like Scrappy or some bullshit. But he tries to disguise himself as a dog, but he talks to people. I don't even know why he's around. But the Lords of Chaos come up and takes over this little lawyer his last name's Smalls. So all of a sudden nobody's noticing how he looks like something out of a Chuck Jones cartoon, like Dr. Jekyll and Dr. Hyde, Yeah. And the little kid is like flipping out and he yells that I'm the Sorcerer Supreme. And they're like, you need to quit reading comic books, you know, and all that stuff. So the lady, his stepmom, who's in love with him, is saying, let me take over. And that's how we get a female Dr. Fate who popped up in Justice League 32. Adam Hughes' first comic. I don't know where he's going with this, but I'm on issue 7, and I'm going to make it through issue 12 because they bring in Apocalypse and Darkseid. But I don't know what the hell. This is the guy that wrote, like Scott said, this is the guy that wrote
Moonshadow.
Moonshadow, which is more like almost like a Russian novel, that's just, you know what I mean? And then you get this crap.
They can't all be winners. They can't all be Moonshadow.
Yeah, you can tell when he's getting the paycheck for his creation and when he's writing for somebody else.
Tim, did you subconsciously buy that because his costume is the same color scheme as Booster Gold's?
No.
Good night, Scott.
On that note, we will say good night to everyone. And we'll catch you all next week. All right. Have a good night out there.
Bye.